Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio. Yeah, here we go. Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio. Yeah, here we go. Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio. Now watch him go. Ladies and gentlemen, Lysander Radio. Now here we go.
So yeah, it's me here with Velyni Vas. Rush has asked us to put a bit of a notice out here. Avoid filling out the trivia until after the show. It's unlikely you're going to be able to get most of the right answers without having heard the material they were based off of. So if you just yeet in random answers now, it's probably not going to go too well for you. So let me go ahead and invite our first guest on. Here we go. Pubstomper, you've got the invite.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Welcome, welcome.
I did that trivia already. I'm kind of bummed.
So I'm assuming, Velyni, that I'll run point on this until you're wrapped up with what you've got going on. So, but you feel free to hop in as necessary.
Oh no, I'm good. I'm here.
Oh, you're good to roll? Alrighty. So Pubstomper, let's open this up with a pretty simplistic one here. What was your first impression of the game?
Hold on, Lysander. Hold on. Let's do an introduction first, though, for people who don't know Pubstomper.
Oh, this is perfectly valid. Perfectly valid.
So Pub, you wanna give like a little quick synopsis here?
I can do that. Yeah, like Buorhann said, the forever noob of PNW. I started in high school with some friends that were on swim team with me, and we made an alliance called the Corn Shuckers. And we were like an SK vassal for the beta testing of the game. And we fought in World War Alpha on the side of SK. And then Speed Round happened, and that was kind of a mess, and we became the Atlas Confederacy during that time. And I was sort of the only forum active player of all of us, so I sort of just became the face of that whole group of players. But I was not the only person who like actively played the game by any means. We had we met at Chick-fil-A every Sunday the first few months of running an alliance. Like all of our FA head and econ head and stuff. And then the final reset happened in August of 2014. I was just starting college that year. And we kind of were beefing with another big alliance called Empire of Spades. There was this big war where them and their buddies kind of just wrecked us, but it ended really weird because all of the gov of our like rival alliance left and joined us. And we'd also kind of just been actively poaching from all over. Like Kurdanak, we poached Kurdanak from the Forever Neutral Alliance, Green Protection Agency. He was like a very known neutral player, and me and a player named Adama turned him to the dark side. And since we got all these other, I don't know, this like blend of communities, we decided it was time to change it because it wasn't really the core group of my high school swim team anymore. It kind of adapted to be mostly like actual players of Nation Sims. And a lot of the people I've been working with, like Abbas and Adama and Carter and Kigaz, they were all part of something called Empire of the Rose in Alex's first game called Pixel Nations. And so they wanted to kind of bring it back, but a bit different this time. And so we went with Rose, and that was kind of how it started. And then, yeah, Marionette War happened right after that. So
Thanks for that, Pub. That's dope to hear your history, the fact that you're sticking around here and still somewhat active in the Rose community, at least where I am at. When I was over there, I think I spoke to you one time. It was for the elections. But what was what really, when you joined PNW, what was your first impression of the game? What made you stick around, and like just what, whether it was like the interface or the play style.
Dude, I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that. I don't know. Me and my friends were just a bunch of nerds in high school. I was in this program that just kind of gave a bunch of like slightly smart kids really big egos. And so I don't know, like it was definitely like almost like treated as a group project by me and a bunch of my classmates my senior year. The first time I ever saw it was in chemistry class. I was working with my friend, well, a couple of friends on a project, and my friend Wei was using one of the like science, like chemistry lab computers to check his nation. And this was maybe February of 2014, so it was still in beta at the time. And I created my nation like 2 weeks after that. It was in March that year that I first had a nation. But I lost my first nation, actually. I did go inactive in 2016 long enough to lose it. So in game, it's not like the original one I used to have.
Alex should have fixed you up there.
I guess first impressions, though, I don't know. I just thought it was cool that there were so many like little mechanics that could be like all these small factors make big differences. I already play another super sweaty game called Dota 2 that's a lot of like small minor things add up to punish you over time, and it's another game of misery, kind of like this one. So I don't know, it just translated well. I really like the like small details and like the stats, I guess, of things.
And my other question, we're gonna ask everybody, these couple ones, but what's your like that moment when you think back on politics and war, just a moment in the game or a moment you had with a friend or an alliance. What's your favorite moment in history?
I mean, the time I had the most fun, like independently, was probably in the Golden Horde with Buo. That was a good time before MP, like right into Surfs Up and stuff. That was really fun. As far as like when I was Gov and had to like sweat, Marionette was pretty cool. It ended pretty badly, in my opinion. Like the piece was not very smooth. Man, World War Alpha, I guess, was pretty fun. Like everyone knew the reset was about to come, so everyone just like YOLO'd. Like, I mean, we're losing all our pixels anyways because the game was going to reset. So nukes didn't exist in the game back then, and I don't think missiles did either. So it was a lot different. But I mean, everyone just went like full chaos with that. That was pretty fun.
Chaos is usually some of the most enjoyable part of the game. So it's always interesting. Some people have they'll enjoy, like as you said, the fun, the action of it, and other people, as we've seen, their favorite moment's going to be like the 6 month after a war when there's a massive nap and they just get to sit there and do nothing. So always interesting to see how different people
I left
enjoy
Rose
the
just
game.
so that I could rogue Prefontaine and Tenages to deliver the first missiles on their nations.
An entirely valid way to play. Entirely valid.
We just don't see that anymore, Lysander.
No, we don't. Which is unfortunate, but what are you going to do? You can't change a culture. Not that easily. So now, you mentioned in your introduction, Pub, you Corn Shuckers, this is the alliance this was your opening alliance here. What was your kind of impulse that led to you saying, hey, let's do an alliance? Was there anything in particular, or?
Can you give me like 2 minutes to go dig for an old thread on the OWF?
Absolutely. We love old forum threads here. Those are the best kind of forum threads. Unfortunately, all the new stuff is AI now.
It's really fortunate that Alex kept an archive because I can go dig through all not wins for me.
Well, it's always fun to reminisce, right? So it's funny that you started playing in the same environment that Alex started making the game. It was all, high school spare time enjoyment. That seems to
I'm
be
getting
the
close. I found the Cornstalker's Declaration of Existence, but that's not quite the one I'm looking for.
Alrighty. You got a hint on what you're searching for so that we know in the meantime?
Honestly, if I don't find it soon, I'll just tell you. We kind of got threatened into taking ourselves seriously, to be entirely honest with you. I can't find it. I don't know. I must have missed it. But we kind of just shamelessly rated everyone, like the big dogs, Guardian, Seven Kingdoms. Back in the day, they were like kind of them VOC. They were big ones. So we just hit whoever because we didn't use forums. It was just me and all my high school buddies. But I think we were kind of problematic because we were like coordinated and grouped, but we didn't communicate through normal means. So people just thought we were super hostile. And one guy from Seven Kingdoms reached out and kind of coached me into how I can play the game diplomatically. And it wasn't Tenages, it was Cracked Mind. He retired like as soon as World War Alpha ended. But yeah, so he reached out and said that SK had this program they did called ACDC. I don't remember what it stands for. Yeah, Tenages never talked to me though. Him and Ragnar, who I think's like TKR, or he was TKR for a long time. He might not be anymore. They kind of helped me. Tenages was I don't remember meeting him until Marionette happened. But Ragnar, yeah, he's awesome. He's a cool dude. Yeah, so they kind of took me in and were like, hey, I don't know if you know, but like there's a lot of certain ways we do things that you'd like completely ignore, but we think there's potential with you. So, and yeah, I just kind of started there, I guess. And they only ever reached out to me because I don't know. I guess I happened to be the one that seemed the most active. And that just kickstarted it into like we had our alliance and then we had some war with Block, if anyone remembers them, and we were like their last war before they really gave up. Um Honestly, Monty, that might be the one. I gotta go look. No, that wasn't it. That was just our declaration of war that year. It was a couple months earlier. I want to say it was in April of that year that it got originally posted. But um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, SK, I guess, kind of coached me into it, and then I relayed information to my classmates from there.
Makes sense. And that kind of centralized unit of having everyone, you can call them out in the real world if you need to, say, hey, can you do this, this, and this? That all works to your favor ultimately.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. I mean, I have a lot to thank from a lot of those guys back in the day. I was clueless as far as a lot of the courtesies and normalcies of nation sims are. But I think that it was also sort of a reason people kind of liked me was I didn't come with a lot of this like baggage from other games or whatever you want to describe it as. I was kind of a clean slate. So plus I had this shadow gov the whole time with Obus that kind of was advising me the entire time. So although he messed up with Reno. That was a doozy.
Having the Abbas Shadow Gov is always a big advantage.
Not a
So
Reno. Hold on. I will type it in chat. I don't want Obus to forget and do
absolutely.
this to me. He told me I could trust someone. I talked to that person and then gave that information to someone who attacked me. So, dude, I don't know what Avis does. I'm not even active anymore. I don't know if he's Shadow Gov.
So on the theme of corn shuckers, this was alliance number 1 for you, and now you guys were part of World War Alpha. So what kind of happened? I mean, obviously this is all back in, you know, before a reset. So what was kind of happening at that area? What led to World War Alpha rolling out?
I mean, I think people were going to find any reason to do it. The reality of it was Test had some crazy bank for some, I don't even remember how they got it. Banks were like just added to the game too, so they were a bit buggy at the time. Like they weren't really, like taxing wasn't a thing back then. You didn't have like a way to tax your nations. But then VOC, which for some of the not as old of players, know if they know DEIC. I don't know if they're still around and rebranded again, but the Dutch East India Co. They started raiding Test like en masse to try and take money out of this bank. No, there. Obvious, I'm sorry, dude. I wasn't trying to do this. There was a bug where Guardian got a bunch of money and like trades and stuff. I'm so sorry, Office got banned for cheating in beta, and I try not to bring it up, but I tend to do it all the time. So Abbas got banned for cheating with this bug thing to get extra money in beta. That he was shown by someone else that did not get punished, but I'm not going to go into that. Anyways, he got banned. Guardian got in like a ton of trouble, and a bunch of their members either got like banned or quit or went inactive. And I think that one of their members sent their bank to Test, and then Test was getting raided en masse by VOC, and then that just kind of burst this whole bubble of like everyone's going to go attack everyone. But yeah, sorry, I didn't intend to. Well, Abbas has kind of called me out for mentioning that story a lot, and of course, like this is the first time I've come on a public thing in years, and I bring it up right away.
Well, fair enough. It matters for the circumstances, right? So hardly you bringing it up out of the blue.
I think he was like 15 back then, if it's any consolation.
So you had a bunch of money wind up from I believe it was Guardian here. After the collapse of Guardian, Test got the contents of their bank, and so then you had Dutch East India Company raiding Test to attempt to loot some of that.
Yeah, I don't remember who sent it from Guardian to that. I remember it was like I think it got found out who sent it. But in the chaos of like them being found to have been, exploiting the game, someone there was like, well, I'm just going to steal their bank, and sent it to Test. And Test back then, I mean, Test is cool. Like, no, I don't have any beef with them, but like there was just this magic about the first like iteration of Test that it hasn't been replicated since, with Jodo and El Pinchazo as the leaders. And it's not a jab at anyone today, but those guys were just like on another level of just being cool. I don't know how to describe it. I thought they were like the coolest.
Fair enough. We've seen I don't know how many iterations of Test since then, so not invalid to say, one's better than the other, because for certain one was. So, and I guess then with World War Alpha, you had the reset afterwards, right?
Yeah, into this summer after it was pretty rough. It was called Speed Round because they were. I mean, I think the reason was like bug testing. So I think Test server now moves at the same speed that Speed Round ran but there was no opt out. Like you either played at that amplified speed or you just didn't play for that summer. And we did play. The Atlas Confederacy never reached rank 1, but we did get multiple nations in the top 10 that were like classmates of mine. We had this weird communist thing where we would like the login bonus our whole alliance got each day, we would all send to one nation, and that nation would buy a city that day, and we just had a circle would rotate that. And over time, we ended up getting really big nations from it. So we did end up taking top 1 right after the final reset, but during speed round, we didn't get that going early enough to compete, I suppose.
Yeah, well, now that seems to be the norm, organizing the funds and making sure, building up one nation after another rather than letting individuals accumulate.
Yeah, the issue there was though there wasn't a built-in way to take it. You couldn't just tax people's income. You had to rely on them sending it to you.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. So after World War Alpha, after that reset going into the speed round, what happened to corn shuckers? Because I know you mentioned just now Atlas Confederacy. So what happened to cause the shift?
It was actually a vote. We did have some really awful, not well-made forums that were free for corn shuckers because that was kind of the norm. Alliances had forums back in the day. Discord wasn't a big thing. And we had a vote on there between it was going to be the Scout Regiment or the Atlas Confederacy. And I don't know how the Atlas Confederacy won. It's the Scout Regiment, I think, would have been way cooler, but it is what it is. And it was right before the first reset into speed round. We were like, hey, let's change things up. The final reset or the resets come in. We can kind of rebrand ourselves, especially because corn shuckers we made is like, I mean, literally a meme. Like we didn't know about the diplomacy of the game, any of the out of the browser based gameplay we didn't really know about. So it just, I don't know. Corn shuckers is definitely just like we were memeing with friends, and it grew to more than that. So we changed the name.
Fair enough. So after Atlas Confederacy, then, I mean, you had the speed round right before that, and then later on in 2014, end of fall, beginning of winter, you had the war of purple aggression that ended with you guys reforming into rows. Was that a mandatory peace term, or was that something that you guys just
No, that
said,
was not a
hey,
peace term.
why not?
They won the war, man. Like they didn't have any incentive to give us peace. Like on in stats, like they zeroed us. Like we didn't have military left. But I don't know. Our morale was just better. We had defectors coming from them like the whole time. I don't know if it was just like they weren't transparent with their members. I didn't have any spies in there. I know people thought I did at the time. I was talking with a couple of their gov members, but it wasn't like I wasn't like getting inside intel really from them. I don't know. It was a weird interaction, but I think that we just sort of became buds, and then the war ended, and they were like, "Well, like you already got like all those people that went over during the war, like." And I think they kind of knew we were going to be rebranding too. Callie still plays. Callie was one of those gov members of Empire of Spades, and Callie still is in Rose. I think as a title gov. I don't know if she has a title officially. But yeah, it wasn't like a peace term. If anything, we kind of got to a point we cheated the color stock bonus because we were just desperate to do literally any form of damage we could, and all the alliances attacking us at the time were purple. We had quite a few members, so we started sending out like little colonies of like 5 members and making them purple to bomb the color stock bonus of the purple alliances hitting us. And I honestly think that gave them more incentive to give us peace than the actual war, because we weren't winning the war. And then Alex changed the color stock formula because we abused it.
I see. Do you remember how that was formulated back then?
I have no idea, dude. I don't know the math equations, but I know that we definitely took advantage of that. And it was fixed out afterwards.
Completely fair. So then you had the what's labeled by the wiki as the Second Global War, although this is the first global for Orbis, after reset and in the actual gameplay. We're out of beta, we're in the actual game now. You had the Marionette War, which you led Rose in. So
I think Marionette was like, no one was surprised when it happened. The whole war that happened before, which I don't know, the people are going to think I'm paying you hearing you call it the War of Purple Aggression. I just call it TAC War to not offend anyone anymore, but I'm not paying him, just whoever asked, but I don't know, it was pretty bitter. There wasn't really a valid CV. It kind of attaches to that Harino thing that Abbas told me I could trust that guy. Basically, I went and talked to that guy, talked to him about hypotheticals of war with like my sphere plus him versus this purple sphere. Not any like set dates or anything in action, but definitely like a hypothetical. Well, he just went and gave those logs to them, so they just hit us, and like that was kind of how that war started. The war ended, and then like they were somehow in a weaker spot after the war, which just I don't know, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But at the time, it is what it is. And we were in like a pretty good spot. We got a lot of really big names when we became Rose, joining from other alliances. And then we actually had members who were in Empire of the Rose and Pixel Nations and were in like some other random place in PNW leave their alliance to join Rose because they remembered it from Pixel Nations. I think, honestly, if I remember right, I think at the end of TAC War, when we were talking about peace, I was already talking to Pre and Tenages and Cody K about attacking them again, like about us going after them post-war. I was like, hey, when this is over, let's just go fight them again. Because they sat out that war, them being Guardian and SK, and they were really the only big players in the game other than us at the time, who weren't in the war. It was just a much smaller game back then, so a lot of like the second largest alliances in a sphere might be just kind of not very active and mostly just numbers. So I intentionally asked my allies to stay out that war because I just wanted them to grow for the next war. I was like planning for the next war. And then Marionette came, and it wasn't really a challenge. Like, I don't know, with Empire of Spades not being around, they were kind of the hardest to deal with the first time, and then they just weren't there the second time. And by this point, missiles had been, like, people had started getting enough money to build missile projects. So missiles were in the game, and that was just kind of a fun little first war with missiles.
And I see here, you guys, your war ended up leading to the Brotherhood of the Clouds withdrawing from the Covenant because
Clouds
I believe
hated
in
me.
early peace.
I don't
or
know if they did
something
anything to
that.
like Lord Frostsword. That dude despised me because he had they had this old forum where they had this chat box, like right when you got on the homepage, that he thought was like only for members, but you could just see it if you went to the webpage. And I used to go in there and pose as like different Greek gods and like say things just really weirdly in character of like, Thanos or Zeus or whoever. And he eventually found out it was me and Adama doing it, and he just hated us forever. So I don't really know what Brotherhood of the Clouds was up to, but Lord Frostsword did not like me at all. I messed with him too much.
And did you guys, when you went into that Marionette War, did you anticipate the lasting impacts, or was it just like a you wanted to hit them kind of war?
I think we were bored, like as a game, to be honest. Like, I don't think anyone was really. Maybe,
Just a
I don't
fun
know.
war,
Coming
yeah.
from you might want to ask like if Hansarius or someone Clark or someone's around from the other block, I guess, at the time. But yeah, I think that those wars for a while kind of laid a lot of the future wars, but there's definitely like a reset. I think MPOLT sort of like changed the timeline because it doesn't really matter what happened before then. At this point, the treaties and web kind of just all got wonky from that. But I think up until then, those two wars alone, like the TAC War and the Marionette War, kind of laid the ground for how things would fall into place going after that.
Yeah, makes sense. So I know after this point you kind of bumped around in different alliances. So I'm just going to skim through the next couple of globals before then you ended up as mediator in Oktoberfest, I believe. So just to kind of cover these so that we're not skipping too much. You had the Great VE War where Viridian Entente and UPN Bloc went up against let me see here. For those of you wondering too where all this information is, there's a great deal of it on the wiki for those that are interested. So yeah, it was, Viridian Entente, UPN, Rose, Test, a lot of groups against SK, Guardian, and Mensa. Now, do you know,
Yes, I
Pub,
know. Kigaz
what?
was a little inactive for that. I mean, Kigaz was active at the start of VE because he was the leader, but then he kind of just was like living life, I think. And so I kind of filled in for VE, like Paragon that was made with VE and TS. That was negotiated entirely by me. I remember that douchebag. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be PG. That jerk leader of VE, Impero. Um, he made an IRC channel called Squat Rack, just to talk about Paragon with me and Partisan back then. But yeah, no, that whole war was stupid because we were actually going to help the Guardian and SK side. Rose was, and then SK had a member leak that they were just going to have us soak up the damage and then attack us right afterwards, like Tenage's master plan. The irony of me being the last trained alliance leader of SK just to have them stab me in the back, but it is what it is. That was all Tenage's. I don't blame. It wasn't Ragnar that did it. It was I can't remember who it was, but someone did. I don't think it was Ragnar. They liked him still. They would have disowned whoever it was. Maybe it was two people who are like pretty knowledgeable are saying it was. So, but yeah, it was pretty messed up in my opinion. So Rose straight up went to VE and was like, "Yo, there's this thing about to happen. We'll help you," and VE was like, "Cool." And then that's like how that war happened. It was totally going to be different than that, and Tenages just had to ruin the whole thing. And then
Seems to
Paragon
be
was
an old trend where a leak comes out and it either causes a war or causes people to switch sides.
I see. Oh, it was Ragnar. Good. You know, I bought stuff from that guy, like in
You
real life.
Pub, do you believe that the game, just for I wasn't around back then. Do you feel like it was a tighter circled game? More not as loose lipped, I guess you could say, as what you'd expect, or what was kind of the feeling like back then?
Everything got leaked, bro. Literally everyone had leaks. I mean, I don't know. Some were worse than others, but like I feel like leaks is kind of one of those things that's just forever been a problem. Like, I mean, there were leaks from World War Alpha. Like there were leaks from the leaks of Abyss to, or not of Abyss, of me to Hareno from TAC War. Like I don't know, leaks have always been a problem. I think it's just a risk that you take when you're playing the FA game. Is you have to keep in your mind, like, is this when I'm telling this person this, how many people am I really telling? But I do think it was easier to become significant back then than it is today. There was just a lot less players, and kind of back to the whole like alliances. There was like maybe like one good alliance per sphere, and there was an exception of the Guardian SK sphere because they were all like really good, like big nations, and they didn't have as many smaller, newer people.
Definitely fair. Yeah, it's a bit easier to distinguish yourself in a pool of, 500 people or less than it is, in a pool of a couple thousand.
I think you're being generous with the
So
500. Like genuinely active players who like were on the forums and stuff, like 200.
yeah, yeah. So, and that's where you've got like 5,000 active nations for PNW now, but you're probably not at you're in like the 1 to 3,000 range of people that are actively checking Discord, but definitely on the lower end of like one for people that are actually in common community servers out in public.
Well, I think people being bothered in real time just wasn't a thing back then because there was no Discord. It was mostly on forums for a long time, and then like the really active people used IRC. But IRC is a pretty archaic tech. Like it's not like there are apps you could get, I think, but they're not like great. Um, so I think having the instant communication to talk with people in real time, especially through Discord, and then like Rose used Slack for a bit. It's increased the competency of most of the alliances as a whole in the game, as well as like just making people better players because you're able to like inform them of changes or things they need to do, or I don't know, just talk with them in general.
News runs a lot faster, and so it's a lot easier to issue orders when, people are checking, you know, not necessarily once an hour, but they're checking 3-4 times a day versus once a day at most.
Yeah. Other than the sweaty players, I think a lot of things have automated now too. I don't really know because I haven't really been Gov actively for years, but I'm sure that it's common for war lists and target lists and city builds and a lot of that stuff to be automated now. A lot of those had to be handwritten or drawn or whatever back in the day. So, I mean, the TAC war, me and Adama, like we pulled all nighters just doing war lists.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely automation, although some people still do it by hand. So varies by the person. Uh After you had, and for those of you who might be looking for, there are dozens and dozens of these smaller conflicts that happened, but unfortunately, to go over all of those would be we'd be here for the rest of the year. So Rose was in yet another great war, in the proxy war, whereby Rose, Viridian Entente, Vanguard, North American Confederacy, Cornerstone hit, Mensa, Cindy, Guardian, Black Knights, Test, TKR. So do you recall? I see the CB on the wiki is listed as out of character attacks through
Yeah.
ads.
I mean, I don't know. I'll try and stay as out of character as I can with this. This one was tough because there were a lot of transgressions taken out of the game, I think, on both sides. There was like some really big beef between me and the original leader of Mensa named Pfeiffer, and I actually loved Mensa. I played on this Rust server with them back in the day. I don't know. They're a good group of guys. Their leader, I don't know why they listen to him. To this day, Pfeiffer's one of the biggest idiots I've ever met in my life. I don't know why they listen to him. But anyways, they had this a couple members they came from another game where they were sort of like competitors with each other, to my understanding. Yeah, see, Dr. Rush is great. Buo is great. Like Mensa was this amazing talent pool of people led by just a moron. I don't know why. It made me so mad. Anyways, he had the biggest crush on my aunt who played at the time and like would text her really weird things. And I used to kind of like tease him for it. And I lived with her that summer. And so I definitely probably crossed the line. I was only like 18 or 19. He said I posted pictures of him as an ad in PNW, which I never did that at all. But yeah, I mean, I definitely said things that were probably a little over the line, but he was like low-key kind of saying not inappropriate things to I don't want to get too into it, but there was both in and out of character things. He also paid a guy I met who played the game. I was interning in DC that summer, living with her, and another PNW. Actually, we met several PNW players there while we were there. One of them was Hodor, and he had paid Hodor in-game currency to slap me in the face when he met me. And Hodor told me, and we like staged it and split the money. But needless to say, there was a lot of beef between me and this guy, and I basically got checkmated into attacking, I guess. He told everyone that I did these out of character attacks and posted his real life photos calling him fat on Politics and War, which didn't happen. A lot of people took it at face value and later apologized to me for it when he couldn't provide any proof. But the damage had been done, specifically partisan. But yeah, so they knew we were going to hit. They've been attacking our protectorates, and like we kind of just had to do something. He had told multiple people this out of character attack thing happened, which there were out of character attacks, just not the things he said happened. And yeah, the war was a massive mess. I mean, I really feel like there was no winning situation in that, but it just became really toxic. It was definitely the most toxic war, I think, that I was part of, and I would not care to have to deal with that again. But that was actually the war that I full on was just like, I'm done being Gov, and I really haven't like seriously been Gov since that war because it kind of just pushed me out.
And I see during this war there was a hacking event that led to the game being rolled back just a couple of days, nothing major, but
yeah, no, I mean it wasn't
that
anything
saved you
too
guys
crazy.
some damages.
Well, and like I don't know, Pfeiffer was like notoriously bad at any video game that like wasn't charts. I don't know. I played him in Rust. After I fully flexed my EP on him in Rust, I felt pretty good about it. We were good. Me and him kind of made up, actually. We made like rival clans on that Rust server, and then like these clan gamers came and we like rallied against them. It was okay. We made up. It was low key wholesome.
There you go. There's a happy ending after all. So I guess the last area that we have to discuss with you here would be Oktoberfest, which for those of you who might be unaware, this was the Covenant attacked, Syndicate and its allies, which Seven Kingdoms, Test, Mensa, Utopia, and then you had the Obsidian Order, which is like the DK, TKR, came in on Syndicate Mensa's side against the Covenant. And I've noticed, going through a lot of these old wars, UPN never really caught a break, did they?
I had a bad habit of really teasing them even like a month ago. Now, I don't know. UPN was all right. I really always liked talking to their leaders, even in TAC War. I'm not going to lie. I hated talking to the DEIC leaders. They were clearly not wanting to talk to me, cold shouldered me every time. Hansarius is like the most normal person I ever encountered in this world. I don't know how to describe it. Hansarius is actually a pretty good dude. They also had Emad for a bit. He was pretty cool. Yeah, there was a handful that they had. They were all pretty cool dudes. They just never could win a war. I mean, an important war, it seemed like, for the life of them. But also, they had a couple guys that they have long gone, but like Saru really got them in trouble, I think, sometimes. More so in beta. And then like Malal was there, or Under, or whatever. He's cool. I don't know if what he's doing. I'm sure he's around still. That dude's always around. But yeah, I mean, he definitely had a mouth, but I liked Under. Under's cool. Underlord GC. So that war, though,
I think,
with Oktoberfest, I just remember that I was really trying to stop it's been years, I could say it. My favorite ally was Alpha. I loved Alpha as an ally. They were always cool with us. We always would help them when we could. I don't know. They were just very transparent. Steve was always really approachable with me. We were really tight for a long time, and then it kind of faded away. But I liked Alpha. They were in the war, and they had a special vendetta against DEIC, and I also was currently working with DEIC diplomatically, so I really didn't want those two fighting, and it ended. It was rough. The whole war was just me trying to stop those two from directly hitting each other and causing me to be like in a really weird spot with two allies fighting. But they ended up not fully fighting. I think both of them ended up having nations sneak into other alliances and attack each other, but they never directly hit each other. Alpha and DEIC? I know Alpha. Was it not DEIC? I'm pretty sure. It was not VE. It was DEIC. There's no way it's VE. It was. I don't think VE had big enough nations. It was like people with similar tiering to Alpha, which was all big nations. I'm like really feeling positive DIC. Okay, well, Alpha and some other alliance. I think it was DEIC that was. We had like a 2-week treaty with them because it got canceled as soon as the war got over. Anyways, yeah, that war was all right. I don't know. It was weird sitting out. That was the first big global war that I wasn't like part of.
And you helped mediate peace discussions there, correct?
I wouldn't say on the grand scale. I would say for like individual alliances, like I'd talk to them about like their situation, or like I gave loans and aid out to other alliances. We did do loans with interest out to people who weren't even allied to for rebuild after that war. Rose definitely got really rich from that war, but I mean, I think we lost a lot right afterwards. Was it silent? It was DEIC, that temporary treaty. It was definitely DEIC. There was like a short treaty we had with them. Them and Alpha were beefing, and I was just trying to get those two not to fight.
So I guess then, Pub, I mean, you've brought up, I mean, obviously the state of the game was very different back then, you know, for people to, for example, even need loans at that time versus now where, you know, pretty much every alliance has a good couple rebuilds under their belt. What are some of the things that you notice have really changed since then? That mechanics or just general state of the game?
I think now people are like really about formalities. I don't know. You don't really see as much we hit you because we felt like it anymore. Also, there seems to be this weird like I don't know, like CB doesn't have to be justified. I don't think that you're not going to be able to make a CB that satisfies everyone. I think that a lot of people struggle with that. Sometimes you just do it, you know? I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of people are risk averse now compared to how they used to be. But I also think that it's hard with the game because, like, fundamentally, as a game, a nation can dish out so much more damage than it's worth. It's really hard to balance out how to make people not risk averse.
And then we've I mean recently at least we've had a lot of wars where even declaring a war now becomes a CB in the future. So even if you have a perfectly good reason, if you act on it, then in the future you acting on it is now a valid CB in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to invalidate CBs, but I think that, yeah, like Belch just said, a lot of them are cope. Like a lot of them, like we don't need you to fabricate some crazy story to justify. Like if you feel like rolling someone, why are you justifying it? I don't think you need to do that. And I almost feel like it'd be more fun if people played that way. Also, I noticed that the treaty web is definitely getting a little messy again. There was this really big trend where people went paperless but weren't actually for a while. I don't know. Just like things are slower now. Wars last longer. Treaties last longer. Blocks last longer. Everything's much slower than it used to be. wars back then would last like 2 weeks, and then it'd be like a whole reshift of things.
Yeah. There's also a lot more centralized here. Well, I think, Velyni, unless you have something else you'd like to pop in here.
No, I mean, I think he covered a lot. It gave, I was pretty quiet because I was listening, to all the history and, everything. It's one thing to read it, but to hear, the older things out of, somebody's mouth who actually experienced it is a little different. So no, I got nothing else. Just, thanks for popping in and sharing your experience. And if you have to guess, I guess let's just leave it on maybe a guess for you. How many more years do you think this game is going to be around?
The game around? I don't know. That's an Alex question, I think. I mean, it'll probably be around as long as Alex wants it to. I'm sure he could probably keep like at least 50 players till they die. I mean, not to be morbid, but I don't know. I'm sure it will have a core group of players for the foreseeable future. But it also comes down to like, is it worth keeping the server up for Alex and stuff? So I don't know how much those costs are or what his stats look like on that side. I hope not, but I don't know.
Fair enough. That's all I got.
Well, thanks
Thank you
for bringing me
very much
on.
for your time. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Abyss should be the next time, because I think we have differing memories. It might have been VE instead of DEIC. But yeah, thanks.
Alrighty. Well, of course, our pleasure. So let's see here. I'm going to bump you back to the audience, Pub. And guest number 2 of the lineup has been invited to speak.
Familiar face around these parts.
Yes. That is if he's still alive, because he might have died in the middle of this, and that'd be very unfortunate. There we go.
Out of the hills he comes. Thalmor, what's up, my man? Welcome to the stage.
Hi. It's good to be here.
So Thalmor, we're gonna start it off. You want to, give a brief little introduction on who Thalmor is as a player, and let the folks who may be living under a rock or coming across a video or something later, who you are.
Yeah. I'm Thalmor, ! Because I had a Discord account pretty early. And when they told me, when the Discord mods came to my house and held me at gunpoint and told me I had to get a real username because they were getting rid of the hashtag number system, I just added the punctuation and it went through. So I'm Thalmor! I have been playing Politics and War since January 15th, 2015, so about 8.5 years. And oh my gosh, saying that out loud is crazy. I'm just a hop and a skip away from a whole ass decade being in this game. Jeez. I guess I'm notable for 2 things. One of them, probably the lesser known thing at this point, is I'm actually the founder and first leader of the Knights Templar, which is an alliance that, if you know them, you either love them or you hate them, I think. The thing I'm probably most notable for is I run the longest running, only bi-weekly radio show this game has, for going on 4 years now. December will make 4 years. Thalmor Radio. And it used to be a weekly show, but that started to not work out because not a lot happens week to week. But just enough happens that every 2 weeks there's usually something for me to flap my gums about to people. I started Knights Templar in February 2017, In 2015, I had a micro that some of you really old people might know, especially you Rosians, the Evenstar Empire. Complete nightmare. Micro of the micro. Absolutely terrible. I got cooed. And then Reaver Access, who had a multi that cooed me, he, for some reason, he knew I was going to coup him back, but he still gave me leadership. And then I overthrew him back. And then Rose dropped us, and then R graded us to death. So then we merged into Colbot, which no one knows. Colbot then merged into Green's alliance. No, we merged into the Odd Squad, and then the Odd Squad merged into Colbot. And then the leader of Odd Squad stole the bank, and then R graded Colbot to death. So then finally Odin, aka Geralt, invited me to Terminus S, and that's where I spent most of 2016 at. And then we had a good time raiding people and fucking shit up. I hope I can drop F-bombs.
Try to
And then
limit as best you can, because it is semi-official here. It is official actually, but you know, occasional's fine, but not everywhere.
Okay, I'll tone it down. I'm a foul mouth. If you listen to Thalmor Radio, you know that I'm pretty rough. One more F-bomb and you're banned. I think Alex is joking, but I will operate as if he is not.
Alex is just throwing bands around like boomerangs.
It's over. So then Geralt came and said, you should just join us in Terminus S. And I said, yeah. And then under the watchful eye of Prefontaine, I actually learned how to play the game. And I learned that you need to get planes, you need to airstrike things. That's how you actually win wars. A strat which wasn't known at the time. A lot of people didn't have planes even in 2016, and so if you had planes, you could just like win. It was really crazy, actually. So then Terminus S imploded, and so then I created Knights Templar in 2017. And actually, again, if you're old, you might remember that there were 3 alliances that came out of Terminus S. And Knights Templar, although we was in the planning the longest, because the planning between me and Odin, the planning for Knights Templar started actually in late 2016, maybe August, September, maybe a little bit later than that. But when I think Prefontaine announced that he was going to disband Terminus S, so then out of the ashes came Cobra Kai Dojo, which was led by Shifty, Reaver Access, and the King in Yellow. And then you had Western Union, which was High Dude's project, and then the membership kind of split between the 3 entities there. And unfortunately, I think most people who were in Terminus S when it split, I think most of them are gone now. I'm one of the few left. Some of them have left and returned. Wisdom Tree returned this year, although he quit in MPO's last time. He returned to KT this year. Thomas Meeker also returned, although he has a different nation now. But there's a short list beyond that. Yeah, I don't have much else to say about me. I was leader Knights Templar from February 2017 to November 2017. Resigned because I was pretty awful. Abyss, from 1 to 10, how was I as leader? 10 being terrible, 1 being terrible, 10 being awesome. I want your report, Abyss, because you were kind of in the know because of your web of informants and allies. Like a 2? Yeah, probably a 2. And the only reason I'm not a 1 is because I was able to put my ego inside and actually resign for the good of the alliance because okay, I was a bad leader. Okay, I'm gonna let this out though, and the current and future KT members can reflect onto this. But I was actually a horrible leader. I didn't know what I was doing. If we go back to the time I was playing, 2015, 2016, and then at the point 2017, the meta of the game was bipolar, and I mean that both. In that there was 2 spears, there were two poles, 2 sides, and also it was pretty wild. the Politics and War meta was the BPD cashier at Spencer's. Okay, it was crazy. You had two sides. Nothing happened without the two sides approving it. Who the two sides would switch from here and there, but there were two sides, and he was in one of them. Or maybe he was outside of it, but he was outside of it. He was in a very vulnerable, weird position. And so I created the Knights Templar to do two things. One is I really loved my Terminus S day, so I wanted to recreate Terminus S. In fact, I actually commissioned, I think it was Ripper, to make like it was the Terminus S flag, but it was like KT. The colors were switched and everything, and I came actually Vas. You can, I think you're flying it, Vas. You could probably post it in chat if you wanted to, but it was to recreate Terminus S basically as this elite high city small fighting force, but also to have a third side. I wanted to. Yes, that is Pimpico. Thank you. That is it. I commissioned that with Ripper because that's how serious I was about recreating Terminus S. And I was successful, but I'll get back to that point. And so I wanted the Knights Templar to be the spearhead of a third sphere to break bipolarity. And to that end, I failed miserably. I'm getting a call on Messenger, but that person will have to wait, actually. And I failed miserably to having the third sphere. I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the will was there. I wasn't in talks with some people, Castor, Partisan, and a few others. The will was there to have a third sphere, but I was not competent enough to execute on that like I should have because I didn't know what I was doing. I was still like a micro leader in my knowledge, in my disposition towards things. I was a fool. I made decisions on whims. One of our allies, our M-level allies, was the Teutonic Order, which was kind of like the baby of UPN. And the whole reason why I signed with the Teutonic Order was because of their theme. Was because Teutonic Order and Knights Templar, they should just be allies because their themes are so similar, right? Like that makes sense, and of course it doesn't, but that's what I operated under. I signed an O level with the Commonwealth because I was friends with Justin. That was it. That was the entire logic there. Okay, like kind of base, but also kind of dumb. So, I was just a bad leader. But because I wanted to shake things up, I attracted very interesting people. Okay, Horsecock, Theodosius, Kegaz. Okay, I attracted interesting, competent, good people who like knew what they were doing. And so they were in upper gov because they wanted to do something. I gave them these jobs. But then as 2017 continued, it was one blunder after another. And eventually it was Kegaz who said, look, if someone fucks up big time again, they just need to resign. And we all said, okay. And so then at one point we were, I think, O levels with Pantheon for some reason. Oh, because they protected us. Yeah, I saw when I formed KT, I sought protection from Pantheon to grant so that their side of the bipolar plate wouldn't target us. And I think that's why I also signed the United Empire of Zaharan for the same reason. It was so that side of the bipolar space wouldn't hit us. And we eventually upgraded Pantheon to an O level because, again, Genius FA, we should have just cut them, but Thalmor was in charge here. We had an O level with Pantheon. Shifty, who I was friendly with at the time, approached me and said, LOL, I want to nuke rogue someone. Who should I hit? And I said, well, Pantheon has a lot of infra. That would be funny. And he just went to the forums and posted a thread with me saying this. And so Pantheon immediately dropped us. And it caused a headache. And did I drop another F-bomb? That's okay. So that was it. Kegaz said, okay, Thalmor, I think it's time you retire. And I said, yeah, I think so too. Theo immediately took over, and that was it for Thalmor's regime. Never had Gov again, but all, including the current one, all regimes afterwards have been very kind to me. They, I don't know, they let me see things. They tell me things that I ask and stuff. Everyone's been real good to me since then. And what did Horsecock, Kigos, Theo, and Vladimir Putin, a fourth guy, what did they all do after I resigned? Well, they turned KT into what it is today, which is, I think, which is honestly the premier pound for pound best fighting alliance the game has. You know, we don't have the mass that TKR or Rose or Eclipse or Syndicate does, but member for member, I think we're the fiercest, and I think it's going to be very difficult to prove otherwise, in my opinion. And I take credit for that because it was my desire for what I wanted KT to be attracted those people, and then at the moment of crisis, I did the right thing, which was step aside and let them take over. So that's why I'm a 2 and not a 1, is because I did that, even though I was terrible in every other way. And there you go. That's my origin story. Since I resigned, I mean, I just shitpost. 2018, I was just a member. I hung out. Okay. I can't swear at all. Oh, man. Okay.
just watch there, buddy.
All right. So throughout 2018, I was just a regular member. I didn't do a whole lot. I didn't do a whole lot. 2019, I didn't do a whole lot either, but then MPLS Last Time started, and that war was pretty hard. We were getting sad on, and I fought for 2 months, but then I quit. I quit the game, actually. I won't go into specifics, but my real life situation for a lot of 2020 was like, no, whole off 2019 was just like crazy. Everything that could have gone wrong in a person's life did go wrong for me, except no one died. But except for that, everything else, man, you name it, it happened. And I just didn't have the mental energy to fight this losing war, this guerrilla war against Inquisition and friends. So I basically quit. I almost didn't come back, but finally December 2019, I don't know if I was bored or what, but yeah, I logged back in, got back on Discord, and I started fighting again. Then I started Thalmor Radio. The war ended early 2020. I kept doing the show. I kept being part of KT. The years progressed. Nothing really changed. I'm pretty much the same and been doing the same stuff since December 2019 as I am now. I'm a member of KT. I joke a lot. I'm not very public. I post a lot on the forums. I'm in Ron. That's kind of about it. I don't talk in the public chats in the KT server. I got my own server, Thalmoria, where I do my show. But I'm only in those circles. Ron, the forums, Thalmoria, and KT server. Those are the 4 places you'll find me. I just joke. I blow up other people's stuff. I joke around. I do my show. And that's me. That's all there is to it.
So thank you, Thalmor. You actually probably covered most of the questions that we would have asked you here. One of the things, I don't know whether or not you do or don't remember much about the time after you founded this. You guys, now, it might have been by design, it might have been by pure happenstance, but you guys were around, for example, like Trail of Tears, and I noticed that really war kind of picked up mainly after actually your resignation. Was it just something where you didn't see any opportunity that you wanted to pursue, or was it more of a by design, you wanted to let KT grow?
I can get into that actually. There was a global that started pretty shortly after KT formed. I forgot the name of it, but we set it out. And there's actually a story there that's very embarrassing to me, actually. But that's okay. Like I said, my AFA was horrible. So let's go back to late 2016. throughout 2015, 2016, in the bipolar world, you had the same two sides fight. And it was basically Rose and VE and UPM and Dutch East India Corp and all their allies against like Black Knights, TKR, the Syndicate, Guardian, Mensa. And they kept fighting and fighting and fighting. Just like how the Rohirrim appeared during the Battle of Minas Tirith to charge into the Orc hordes, MPO arrived to relieve Rose and VE and all of them. And they kept losing, even though MPO had come. And MPO, for those who don't know, in another game, they were like, I'm not going to say the name of it, but they were like top dogs. And so people were really hoping if MPO showed up that they would turn the tide and maybe they could start winning wars. But that never happened. No. Easy Mode Coalition, whatever they were called, which was the Knights Radiant, the Syndicate, Black Knights, Guardian, they kept winning. Okay, Rose and friends, it was L after L, L after L after L. And finally, I forgot if it was a silent war or what, but they eventually just split up. They were like, we can't win, we give up. And what eventually happened was that enabled the Inquisition to form, because people reached out and was like, this needs to change. And so finally, in early 2017, alongside KT being founded, you also had Inquisition being founded, which at that point was New Pacific Order, Black Knights, Cornerstone, and Zodiac, I believe. And shortly after forming, they hit Easy Mode Coalition, which was at that point the Knights Radiant and I think Guardian and maybe Grumpy. The Syndicate was paperless at the time, I think. And I was approached by Castor, who I forgot, was Lordaeron a thing then? I think it was. Castor approached me and was like, you should help us attack Easy Mode Coalition. And I said, yes, we will. And the way he convinced me was by saying, you know, he harkened back to the Terminus S days where he said, well, blood for the blood god. And I said, yeah, blood for the blood god. And it was time to go. And it was time to hit. It was the blitz. And I said, no, we're not helping. I went back on my word. Total pixel hugger moment. And that did not do me any favors, but we stayed out of the war because Inquisition would hit Easy Mode Coalition, and it didn't go well for them. They took another L. We rose to the number 3 alliance because everyone had took it so much. So two things happened. Everyone was getting beat up, but we weren't. So our score, everyone else's score was going down. Ours remained the same. But because everyone was at war, I think the meta at the time was if you're at war, you stop recruitment. Well, we weren't at war, so we kept recruiting, and none of the newbies wanted to join the alliances at war. That would take them. So KT ended up with like over 100 members in the span of like so many weeks, a couple months after we were founded. And we were the number 3 alliance there briefly during this war. Pantheon, our protector, was number 2. So that was really funny. And I don't think that's ever been recreated in the game, in which the number 2 alliance is protecting the number 3 alliance, but it happened. The war ended. We stayed out of it. My genius FA suspected that, you know, Inquisition needed help to defeat Easy Mode Coalition because we don't want Easy Mode Coalition to dominate forever. So we actually gave New Pacific Order $500 million interest-free as like a rebuild loan, which they paid back pretty quickly. That was another genius FA move from me that I think very few people know about, actually. The year continued. Was there another global in 2017 besides that?
I believe so. That would be no, actually, the next global listed here after Trail of Tears was in 2018.
Yeah, so as for wars in 2017, it was small stuff. We would as we're training, our newbies would attack smaller alliances. We actually this is another Thalmor FA moment. We had a protectorate named Animal Kingdom. I forgot the name of their leader, but he was very unpopular at the time. So even though we was protecting him, his alliance, we actually rolled them. I forgot the name of the war. It was our first actual ever war, I guess you could say. But we rolled him with Arg and I think another alliance we were friendly with, which was really funny. No one really cared because everyone hated it because it was a dumb micro and everyone hated the leader. But we rolled our own protectorate. Charming Friends, I think, had a treasure, and we were trying to be friendly with Arg. That was another Terminus-S thing. We tried to be friends with Arg, paperless. And so Arg rated Charming Friends to get a treasure. We helped with that. That's on the wiki. The closest thing we've ever had to a first real war it was actually November. It was actually the month. It contributed pretty big to why I resigned. And it happened in the same month in November, I believe. But we had a protectorate called the Principality of Xeon. And Oblivion hit them. And we countered for Xeon. Oblivion was at 100% militarization. We were at peacetime MMR. We only had, I think, 36 hours to prepare. We hit Oblivion and we zeroed them out in less than a day, which I thought was pretty impressive. We won. We protected Xeon. Peace. This is so funny. Peace negotiations start. And I can't even tell you what happened, but I handled peace negotiations for us. And somehow we ended up paying reps to Oblivion. I don't remember how. I was talking to this one guy. I can't remember his name. He lives in Lexington though. And he somehow convinced me that we need to give him money. So we ended up paying reps to Oblivion, even though they were the aggressor. There was no CB, it was just a raid. You guys, I was not exaggerating when I talk about how terrible I was, guys. I had horrible FA. It was really bad. So that was our first kind of war. I resigned then. Why did KT not fight wars? There were just no wars to fight, and we just managed to stay out of the one that did happen. There was some, like I said, we fought with some micros. We thwacked Oblivion pretty hard. But Oblivion was our first real war. Our second real war came under Theodosia's leadership when Castor, who was then leader of the Assassin Order, not Lordaeron, got caught trying to plot to hit us. And so us and this other alliance he was plotting against worked together to roll Castor and Assassin Order, his alliance. That was our second real war. Kind of a dog pile, but we had a good CB. And then finally, our first actual super real war was the first Global of 2018, in which we were one of the targets. They attacked us. We blunted their blitz, and I think our side won. We came out, I think, neutral in net. And I think our reputation for being a good fighter kind of started there because we showed that, even though we had a really bad history because of me throughout 2017, it became proof that actually we can fight. And I think as 2018 continued, that reputation became more solidified, and then it didn't take much longer beyond that before we got the reputation that we have now, and we've had it for a long time. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Now, the one other thing that we have that we'd like to go over is because you do have a bit of a different history here with the longest running radio show, as you mentioned, in the game that is still going on to this day. What made you decide that was something you wanted to pursue?
So I actually have a history in politics and radio shows that predates Thalmor Radio, because when I actually created another radio show in 2017, shortly after I created the Knights Templar, called Templar Radio. And the reason for creating Templar Radio was because I thought it would be good for exposure for KT, for recruitment, and also like good FA. If I could create a product that brought people entertainment, I thought that would look good on the rest of the alliance and for me. So there was some strategy involved here. And I did Templar Radio for about maybe a month and a half. It wasn't very good because it was an interview-based show. And so the idea was that I would bring on 3 unique, relevant guests every week. I would interview them for a little bit, and then it'd be a different 3 guests the next week, with the extra stipulation that I would not reuse guests. If you know anything about doing these kind of shows, you would know that I just described to you a nightmare, because trying to find leaders and upper gov people who can voice chat on a Friday night and you can't like reuse them and you're trying to do it weekly, this is impossible. So what quickly happened is the first like 1, 2, 3 shows were pretty good, and then there was an exponential decrease in quality because I was scraping the barrel of like micro leaders and like people who had like the social skills of like, well, it's supposed to be well, I can't say anything because this is an official show. People with really bad social skills. It was terrible. I forgot. I think it was the then leader of the fighting. I forgot if it was the then leader of Pantheon or what. But I got on one guy who had such trouble articulating himself that I would ask him a question. His number one response was, "I don't know." Like what's your alliance doing? I don't know. What's your government guy doing? I don't know. And so eventually I was like, well, what do you know? And then his response was, the only thing I do know is that I don't know. And that was like a nightmare. Yeah, it was Madden. Thank you. It was Madden. It's been like 6 years now. Nice guy, just didn't know anything. And so I eventually gave up because the quality of the show was bad, and it stopped being fun. It was too frustrating to do because of my own limitations. And so finally, I pick up the game again, December 2019. And why did I start a radio show? That's a good question. I don't actually remember. I think I thought it would be fun. I think that was my main motivation, is because I always thought radio shows, and they're very uncommon. I don't know why, but you go back to 2015, 2016, like radio shows were popping. Castro could do an everyone ping and get like 70 people on, with a snap of the finger and talk for hours, and people would listen. Now, I don't know. Radio shows are just kind of dead. They're not as popular. Well, I don't know. I say that, but like there's like 50 people listening here. I know Morph gets a lot of people. The War show we had on Raw and listening to like 70 people. I guess they're still popular, but it's not as many people doing them as they used to be, which it's hard to do. But I thought it would be fun. So that's why I started Thalmor Radio. And as I did more but I changed my philosophy, because being guest focused was very limiting, because having to schedule people, and I wasn't a good interviewer either, and I still don't think I'm that good. And so doing Thalmor Radio, I committed to myself that I have to be the main event. I have to be the draw. And so I named it Thalmor Radio after myself. And it's an entertainment show where it's me and I pop off and I try to be funny. And I do bring guests on very rarely, but it's a one-man show for the most part, except for whoever my co-host might be for that week. And it's worked out pretty well. I've kept doing the show as long as I have for a number of reasons. One is I just think it's fun. It gives me something to look forward to every week, or every 2 weeks now, I should say. It's helped me to become a better speaker, which is really good. It's helped me to be a better thinker, because when I have to sit down and articulate myself to people, it's helped me, because when you talk to a group of 20, 30, 40, 50 people every week or every 2 weeks, that makes you really have to work on how you present things, how you talk, how you speak. And that's been very valuable to me. Although I still think I talk a bit too fast. That's something I'm still trying to work on. I need to slow down because I have a nasally nerd voice anyway. So if I talk too fast, it's a little bit hard to understand me. Yeah, it's made me a better speaker, better thinker. It's just fun. And that's basically about it. That's why I started the show. I thought it'd be fun, and I've kept doing it because it has remained fun, and I've really benefited personally from it.
Makes sense. Well, Velyni, do you have anything else that we should go over for Thalmor here?
No, I mean, I think just thank you, Thalmor, for continuing to do the show, being engaging with the community. If we don't sit here and have these type of events, then it's a pretty boring it's a pretty boring time otherwise. So thanks for doing what you can and pulling your weight in the community. It's always a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Lysander and Vas. I have to say the same to you guys. Lysander, you are a regular name in the community doing the things that you do. And Vas, maybe you're not as well, actually you are pretty public because I know you talk to everyone. Vas truly is like a top 3 FA guy right now, and the KT community is super blessed to have him in our ranks.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much, Thalmor. And so I think we're ready to move on to the next guest. Thank you again, Thalmor. Great to have you here. Now,
All right. Okay. Can I do my bye before you kick me to the audience?
absolutely,
People like
absolutely.
Well, it's actually good night.
Oh, before we roll into the next individual, I'm going to go ahead and invite Mr. Hippo Man up on stage, but we're not going to roll into that just yet.
Got a little bit of news, Lysander.
Yes, we do. Do you want to tell him, Velyni?
Yeah. So Alex, while filling in here, decided to design a nice little nation award for everybody to redeem. Just click on the link right there, and you will be able to retrieve that. So thanks, Alex, for doing that, and thanks for tuning in.
Just by clicking that link, you will get the 9th anniversary radio show Nation Award. So it's greatly appreciate Alex doing that for us here. And all you need to don't click the log out link, but the 9th anniversary show link, that'll pop it right there for you guys. Now, our next guest here, we have, why don't you same thing as we've been doing before. Let's go through an intro here. Give us the synopsis of what you've been, what your history is.
You want a synopsis of my history? I could just talk the whole evening away with it.
You could, but
What's up?
All right. So for people who don't know, the name is Buorhann. Buorhann, if you pronounce it Buorhann, or if you can't pronounce it, say Boo Boo. All right, that's the nickname that some Romanian in a guild from another game gave me because he could not pronounce it at all. Or you can just call me Hippo. One of the three. I have joined the game back in 2015 with an alliance called Mensa HQ. And we came from a different game. I won't mention that game. It's not the one that everybody is familiar with. It's a completely different game. We came over to Politics and War and looking for a new game to play since the game that our community was in was kind of going downhill real fast. And ever since that we have participated in a game, we every single one of us has caused some kind of trouble in politics and war at one point in time. I have been in multiple alliances. I have helped lead many coalitions and some of the major wars in the game. And I would say that I have been very influential in the game changing over the course of the early years of the game's history. I have been in, I think it was like 2020 or 2021 when I went into retirement, and then I just happened to pop back out of retirement, and I'm now back in the middle of another major war. Yay. So I'm going to let you guys ask questions because I could talk. So you ask me what you would like to know, and I will answer it because, like I said, I do know a lot about the game.
Well, during our discussion when I reached out to you and we were trying to organize everybody, you mentioned that you joined with Mensa HQ during around 2015, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, what was that? What was that like? That early time frame with Mensa?
It was chaotic. It was very chaotic. The Mensa community back then was a very trolly, joking around, just causing all sorts of mischief. But at the same time, in our internals, we were figuring out the game. We were trying to find a way to be the best at war and stuff like that. And shortly after we joined, like any alliance that was like talking smack to us, uh, we made it a point that, hey, we're going to go after that alliance. And eventually we went after one alliance called Socialist International, something like that. And we just curb stomped them. Like we just rolled them over. And that was our first war under our belt. And then, I mean, like we started getting in all sorts of like, I mean, like it was pretty fast paced as to how quick we got into some drama and stuff like that. But eventually, at one point, UPN turned us down in favor of Brotherhood of the Clouds, and we cut that set like a little bitter taste in our mouth because we were like thinking, oh, hey, we'll partner up with UPN, and that never worked out. And ever since then, we took every opportunity to find a way to trash UPN. And even still to this day, I mean, like, there's just that resentment. Anyways, moving on from that, we eventually partnered up with Guardian and Seven Kingdoms. Now, I mean, like some people remember that there was Syndicate, Mensa, Guardian, and Seven Kingdoms, and that was the beginning of Cindy Sphere. And but at the time when we joined up with Guardian and Seven Kingdoms, a leak happened, and Syndicate, VE, Rose, all of them, they just rolled us over. But during that war, however, we were finding ways to abuse the war mechanics in our favor. And some of our members in Mensa was able to perform well above our city count. Like we abused the heck out of planes, for example. And I mean, we still lost the war. I mean, but it was a big stepping stone to us to like, all right, let's nitpick as to how the game is done. And so after that, there was like some drama between Viridian Entente and Syndicate, where Syndicate split up. They came over and they tied up with us. That was the beginning of Cindy Sphere, and then that blossomed like quite possibly one of the best friendships in the game for quite a few years until the core government of Syndicate broke apart or left. And then from there, after multiple wars, after multiple changes, the Mensa community broke apart. The Syndicate government, the main government people like Jessica, Roy Mustang, Manthrax, Partisan, etc., all them, they kind of splintered a little bit. Some of them quit. Some of them stuck around. I think that's when Zed took over, if I remember correctly. And then like some of Mensa went to Guardian, some went to Rose. Like we just split up. I went over to TKR for a short stint. And then after that, like I went and joined up with Terminal Jest when Partisan decided to do that. Went and played around with Guardian for a little bit, and then I got bored, and I decided that my next big accomplishment was to try to change the game in a different way because I got tired of the bipolar state of the game. And so I went and I touched base with some people who I enjoyed working with back when I was FA of Mensa. And I hit up Sketchy and Shyho and all them, and I formed up the Golden Horde. And the goal of that was to try to like do something different in the game. Like the original goal was to be like basically mercenaries. That didn't pan out. So then the next goal was to try to promote newer alliances, lesser known alliances, to like try to grow them and try to get them in the top or whatever. But that also didn't work. And so eventually we tied up with Knights Templar, and then that eventually led to the formation of Ketog with Impria, Oblivion, Guardians, and Grumpy. And that by far was probably one of my most favorite times in the game because like we had our own little corner in the game, in the treaty web. We weren't tied to the treaty web at all, and we were still punching well above our weight. It was probably one of the most fun, controversial times in the game's history. And it was a nice little dramatic moment. It like the forum was like full of drama during that time, and that was really nice to see that kind of activity for the game.
Sounds like it. Yeah, activity has always been a stickler, something that comes and goes. So you got to take those bright spots as it happens. Now, you mentioned Terminus Jest. What was, I mean, you went, you joined, you were invited there. What were some of the things you guys went out and did? What was the goal there?
So Parson and Ripper had this idea about forming an alliance to just do goofy stuff. Like we were going to just like attack random alliances and just post up a bunch of memes and just cause as much havoc as we possibly can. Like we went into that knowing full well that all of our pixels, so to speak, were just going to get burned. We were just going to do it just for laughs and giggles and just be a general annoyance and just have fun with the game. And that man, so I joined Terminus Jess. I was the smallest person in that alliance because I purposely kept myself at 17 cities. My argument for that was that was the widest range for me to participate in battles. I think the average city count at that time was around like 21, 22, something like that. So I didn't want to grow too big to get out of range of some of the lower city counts, and I didn't want to stay too small to stay out of hitting some of the wells if I was needed to do suicide attacks. But in that moment, there was a lot of memes uh, about me, so to speak, just trashing into like IQ's random nations. That was probably my prime activity. That was when I was able to like log on real quick and counter a lot of battles and stuff like that. And it was a ridiculous moment. I'm actually very surprised that Partisan managed to pull it off as well as he did, because I was actually expecting IQ at the time that once we split up, once we broke apart Terminus Jest, because like once we did our hit, we just said, hey, let's break up and go back to our original alliances and stuff. I fully expected IQ to like just go with a world war and just hit all the alliances, but that never happened. And I'm actually very shocked and surprised by that, because that was like one of the biggest concerns at the time. Was like, all right, if these alliances accept us back, what's their reaction going to be? Because now we just put them with like billions of cash and damage, and they're going to be looking for reparations or something like that. So how they're going to get that pulled off? And nothing happened. It like there was like no reaction other than a bunch of saber rattling on the forums and stuff. And so we were just, hey, we got away with a free war. I mean, this was easy.
Yeah, sounds like you got away scot-free.
For the most part. But as Abbas pointed out in the chat, it did lead to the next major war, the Crusade, which they ended up. I mean, that ended up in white peace, but I would say it was probably safe to say that we won that. That was the very first war that my new the newly created alliance of the Golden Horde jumped into after a certain benefactor paid a lot, and uh, that was probably at the moment where when we created the alliance that we were like, okay, this can work, because we were competing with Rose on who could do the most damage. And I think that we edged it. I may be wrong, but like we only had, I don't know, something like 20 something members at the time, and we were sitting there competing with. I think Rose was the number 2 alliance in score at the time, or maybe number 1. I can't remember. And so like that was like a big deal for us. Like we were like, okay, can this work? Oh wait, this definitely can work if we keep performing like this.
Yeah, sounds like a the usual Premier War strategy here. I mean, to name, we just had Thalmor on, and to bring up where KT's gotten, sounds like a very similar mentality there of outpace the damages per member that normal alliances can put in.
Yeah, like, and that's something I've always thought about in the game. There's a lot of old alliances in the game, and it's not a bad idea to try to take a risk and just create a new alliance with a different goal in mind, to like break out of the status quo of the game's uh, what the game's community has built. Um, like with Thalmor mentioning about when he created Knights Templar, or when he was recreating or helping recreate Test and stuff like that. Um, Stuff like that like brings. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it always brings some kind of interest back into the game. It keeps the game from going into stagnation. And as Thalmor was sitting there talking about earlier about his radio show, about how when he dropped from a weekly to like a bi-weekly, because it just got to the point to where there wasn't much to talk about. Like the game has started to go into like this downhill path of stagnation. And personally, I'm hoping to help prevent that, because personally I got bored, so that's why I reformed the Golden Horde again. And I hope a lot of other communities out there, like they do some changes. They see where it's going and decide to make some moves on their own instead of going back into bipolarity. Because once it gets to that point, that's who your enemies are going to be. It's just a matter of like, all right, when are we going to fight them at that point? But if the communities out there decide, all right, hey, we got to shake things up, then that's when the politics come into the game, and it keeps things new and energetic. Like towards the tail end before MPO's last time, when we had our own little mini sphere kind of thing, and then there was chaos that formed, or the mini sphere of chaos that formed between like Soup Kitchen, oh crap, that Manthrax's alliance, I can't remember, and TKR, and I think they had two other alliances. I can't remember off the top of my head. When that formed up, that right there gave me hope in the game, because it kept the game fluid. Like at one point in time, like Ketog and Chaos was fighting, but then like once we heard that IQ was going to roll both of us, then we decided, oh hey, let's stop the war, and then like let's just go and take care of this threat, or try to fight together to take care of this threat, because we were both being a target here. Like that shows like the how fluid things can be with the political structure between spheres. But once you have everybody tied up together, it's kind of like, all right, what can we do now?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I am going to jump us back a bit in time to just a little over Oktoberfest, the 168-day war here.
Okay.
That, now, granted, that was named because of, I believe, how long it took Rose to come in. It was only a 29-day war, didn't go for 168 days. What were you? You were probably more of a member around that time. It was, when did this war kick off? Okay, so no, it was 2016, early 2016. So what were you guys thinking there? That was when you guys launched the raids on Vanguard.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. I love that moment. That was great. So Vanguard got on our radar because they were another alliance in the game that we were butting heads with. And we were trying to figure out how to manipulate the treaty web at the time to work in our favor. And when we were looking at it, we were like, well, we want to go to war. Like Mensa was always about conflict. We were literally always looking for a way to fight someone, all the time, every time. And certain alliances on our side was always trying to hold us back. But at one point we were like, all right, we see a target that we can fight that has been on our radar for a little while. They have no treaties at the moment. We'll just fight them one-on-one. But if it escalates, then we got proper justification. And so, yeah, we just decided, hey, let's go mess up Vanguard, and it just escalated from there. Like it took a while, and we were intentionally trying to bait out Rose behind the scenes. We were trying to like provoke them into escalating, because there were some alliances on our side that wanted to fight Rose, but we wanted to find a way uh, to justify it to our other allies that, hey, we're on the defense, not on the offense. And because there was like some alliances out there that was like, oh yeah, we'll only join the war if it's to your defense. And so we had to try to find a way to manipulate that mentality to provoke that big war. It was definitely, like, I'll admit like wholeheartedly right now, it was totally our fault. We were definitely the aggressors in that. And we did it with the full intention of trying to get everybody to participate, because we wanted a world war. We wanted it to happen. And that was a blast. The memes were just priceless during that time, especially the countdown clock. I think it's still going, as a matter of fact. Averick from Mensa, who's now in Guardian, he made a website that counted down the time, or counted up the time as to like how long it took Rose to reply. We just kept posting it over and over and over.
Yeah, there was even on the forum post. There's a little timer there for not the forum post on the wiki.
Yeah. So
What's up?
what about when once MPOs last time started, New Pacific Orders started becoming this political power, and things started shifting and moving towards that dramatic time frame. What were you seeing as far as how things were changing and expanding leading up to that?
So one of the major things that I've noticed, someone gave me internal views to NPO's forums, and something just didn't add up at the time. We noticed, like, during NPO's last time, when they were rolling us, because we knew, like, both Ketog and Chaos, we both knew going into this that we were going to just get curb stomped. We knew, but we had to fight on principle. We had to. I mean, like, they were plotting to roll us. There was a log out that BK wanted to roll TKR out of the game. That didn't sit well with me. I don't like rolling people out of a game. I'm not big into that. And there, like, I was sitting there sharing conversations about um, them trying to persuade to join our side against Chaos, and I was constantly telling them that no, this is our war. Like, stay out. We don't need you. And then they also had inquiries from alliances trying to join their side to roll us. And I don't know, something was like really fishy. And then during the war, NPO's last time, we noticed that they were burning a lot of resources, a lot of cash and resources. And we were sitting there going like, okay, how do they have this much? And I know, like, to those of you who know the outcome of that war, you're starting to think, okay, we we see what the buildup is getting to, and but we just didn't know at all. It wasn't until other alliances suddenly flipped over to our side that we started, like, someone eventually found the pieces that led to the eventual outcome of the war. But both of us, we, like, both Ketog and Chaos, we were sitting there just kind of confused as to how they had this many resources and stuff like that, because they were burning through a ton of it on us. And at that point, I knew. Well, I shouldn't say I should say that we both knew that something was extremely wrong, because of with IQ's performance in the previous wars. They didn't they didn't fight as well as they did in MPO's last time. They actually, a lot of them just kind of folded over, or they just burned out too quickly, or something like that. Um, I think the Crusade was when they finally stepped it up, and I think someone said in the chat they could have eventually flipped it. I don't know. That's a big question mark. They did have a lot more to flip that war, but uh, I don't know. That still could have gone either way. A white piece made sense at that point in time. But in NPO's last time, it was just a lot different. There was a lot more aggression, a lot more willing to spend resources, a lot more activity, a lot more. Just they were just overwhelming us all together. And with all the communications, all the backroom stuff, all the politics of it, like at one point we even like gave them a flat out full like surrender, like not white peace, like, hey, we surrender, we abide to your terms, and they did not want it. They argued that they wanted it for the longest time, but once we offered it, they just turned it off. They just turned it away, and they said, nope, we're going to keep going. So something was off. We didn't like it, and that's when I realized, okay, this is when they're trying to ruin communities, and it got personal. It got too personal at that point.
Definitely, yeah. makes sense there, and it sounds like you mentioned it went a lot farther beyond just the basic premise of a war. Now I know that the NPO's last time actually started during you could argue the planning for it started during Surf's Up, which was when you guys at Ketog were hitting chaos, and both sides found out it was leaked on the forums that hey, they're gonna hit both of you folks. And so there was the ceasefire, and there was the let's preempt this hit.
So, just to intervene on that, we actually knew about it before the leaks on the forums. The leaks on the forums just confirmed everything that we pieced together.
Okay, that was the final straw there.
Right.
And then and yeah, actually here I think Adrienne interview is going to cover a lot of this. We can actually, if you're good with us adding her on here now, you guys can speak about this from the two different sphere perspectives.
Oh yeah. I'll be glad to talk to Adrienne about it. I mean, like her and I were we had pretty open communication during our war with each other, and we were like constantly sharing like tidbits of what we were hearing, all the rumors and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, like I would definitely love to have her up aboard and share her insight.
Hey, boy.
Hey, what's up? Hey, did you bring my tequila?
I don't have it. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, you got to go back and go get it for me now.
So yeah, I guess let's continue on this topic of the leak and that getting everything getting you guys might have known about it beforehand, but everything gets confirmed on the forums then on the 12th of that month. So what were kind of you guys had a ceasefire from that point on. What were the discussions like pre
Yeah.
NPO's last time?
Yeah, I remember it actually. We didn't find out that long before then. It was maybe like a day or two before, if I remember right.
I was pretty sure it was about a week before it.
That much longer? Maybe when we started
Yeah.
hearing rumors, but
Because like once we started figuring out that Black Knights and NPO was trying to sniff their way into our conflict, that's when we started piecing things together. And then when Sphinx dropped the bombshell in the forums, that's where like, oh hey, it confirmed everything right there.
Sphinx, I thought it was like Rainbow or something.
Oh wait, no, you're right. It was. It was. It
Yeah,
wasn't
but
Sphinx.
Sphinx was in it, I think.
That's right. That's right. That's right. He made the big wall of text and that got dropped.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, no, that was interesting. And then we were just like, well, that definitely confirms it. Did like I think we were we already on ceasefire or did we ceasefire right after that?
Okay, so this is gonna so do I really admit the planning that we had?
Say whatever.
Okay. All right, since it's been so long. Okay,
Yeah.
so once we got confirmation, we decided to fake prolong the war to try to give chaos enough time to rebuild like their spies and some of their military back up
Yeah,
so that they could actually
so-
participate in the war.
sorry. Sorry.
But yeah, that was like once we got confirmation, we were kind of like, all right, well, we'll do a ceasefire, but we have to try to uh, plot it out to where um, we could buy enough time for chaos to rebuild back up enough to participate. Plus, some of our members had to rebuild back up too, and so there were like some minor skirmishes here and there to try to smoke screen our intentions, and but we didn't have enough time to pull off what we wanted to do. But I mean, like when you have a juggernaut, looking to stampede on you, I mean, you gotta act when you gotta act.
Yeah. It was pretty stressful trying to flip things around. actually, and I remember that it was like, God, it was just so. There was just so little turnover, and I remembered that I had wanted to wait an extra day, and I'm glad we didn't because the extra day I wanted was the day that they ended up having planned to hit us instead. But yeah, we were in a rough shape, and if I remember right, we mostly just focused on. We all kind of took a different group. Like most of us in Chaos, I think, focused on BK, and then somebody else, like the rest of you guys, focused on that block. Um, what was the block? It was like
I can't remember. Like Citadel, I think it was.
Thank you. Yeah, and we ended up needing a lot of help still on BK just because we were in real rough shape. Um, but it was because like everybody came in kind of piecemeal on us. That was the only reason we had any success. Like if they had all gotten together and done like a united counter, we would have been done for. But they came in one day, a couple came in, another day, some more came in.
It was a lot. It was a lot for us to deal with. That was, man. I'm actually kind of disappointed about that particular war because out of the game's history, that particular war, um, we saw a lot of players leave the game.
Yeah, that was rough.
Like it got too personal. It wasn't like any other war in the game.
No.
Like usually like when we have peace talks and stuff like that, like if we offer surrender or a white peace and stuff like that, then negotiations start going from there. I mean, like there's a little bit of trolling, there's a little bit of arguing and stuff like that. But once one side approaches about like white piecing or surrendering, um, that's when the talks begin.
Yeah.
And anytime that Adrienne or Sketchy or whoever approached the other side about it, they just shut us down. They just like walled
Yeah.
us off.
Well, I remember too, like even before we got to that point, initially it was just against like BK and whatnot. And MPO was supposed to be a different sphere, and obvious, they were a syndicate at the time.
Oh yeah.
And they had done, do you remember that like they did that limited hit against Guardian and Grumpy?
Oh yeah, and oh
And
yeah, yeah, I remember that
yeah,
real thoroughly. I
so
argued, I ripped into some people about that.
yeah, and so they were, Syndicate and MPO were just hitting Guardian and Grumpy initially, and it wasn't supposed to expand beyond that. And so we were kind of letting it go just because we're like, well, what can we do about it? We had to sit here and focus on this other war. So that was tough. And then, like, less than a week later, MPO decided to hit TKR, and that just kind of on like
They were so
honestly, I have no reason to lie at this point. I still don't know what the hell they were talking about. Like, they made up some logs and or took something I said out of context and used that as their thing, but they never showed anything because there wasn't anything to show. And it was just absolute fucking chaos from that point. Like it was just, that was just kind of when it really became impulse, and it just sucked after that.
oh yeah. Like when Syndicate hit Guardian and Grumpy for their well hunting reasoning, they there was a reason like if we had reacted to that, if we countered Syndicate, not like we could anyways,
Uh-huh.
that was going to be the justification for MPO to jump in.
Yeah.
And that particular bait never got touched. So MPO just had to eventually just jump in by themselves on TKR, and then that caused the schism between Syndicate and MPO because there was a deal being made, and MPO basically shoved that deal right back into Syndicate's face, which I think was led by Wilhelm or Sisyphus at the time,
Yeah.
and he was mad.
Yeah, he was. I remember Sissy said that he was that he had agreed to the, if I remember everything right, he had only agreed to the Guardian, and Grumpy had just to like keep NPO like in place while he tried to figure out what was going on. He's just like, okay, we'll do this, and that'll give him something to do, and then we'll calm down and we'll figure it out. And obviously that did not happen.
So, I guess the question on the line of the NPO's last time thing here is, I mean, this was at the time it surpassed all the combined damages of every past war. You know, it broke 2.5 trillion, which we haven't had since. And I mean, 9 months of just pure slugfest. Do you guys think there would ever be another war that comes up in the same manner? And if there was, could the game ever like withstand that?
I don't. All right, so I don't think another war will happen that will get as personal as that one did. I don't think that will ever happen again. I think a lot of people, players in the community, don't want that to happen again. It got nasty. It got real nasty.
Yeah.
But I will say that there will be another war, probably pretty soon. Maybe even this one that's happening right now. I don't know. That will surpass that 2.5 trillion number. I mean, the average city count in the game right now is in the 30s, if I'm not mistaken. And there's tons and tons and tons of resources that everybody is sitting on. As a matter of fact, um, when Borg got looted from that bug in the game after the after the recent war changes and stuff, I think he had a value of like over 300 billion just sitting on him. Imagine what other people are sitting on. So that 2.5 trillion number from MPO's last time, that's easily going to get broken eventually down the line.
But not because of the length of the war, in my opinion. We'll never see anything even close to an 8.5, 9 month war again.
Oh yeah,
Makes sense.
definitely. Yeah, that the length was insane.
Yeah.
Velyni, do we have anything else that you feel is
You two have a
important?
lot of untapped knowledge right now here. So ask any question you guys want.
I would say one question I have is what is your guys? You guys were here and going through probably in my opinion what was a make or break point for P&W. With MPO's last time. What? Just one small question regarding that is just, did you guys feel like as players during that time this might be like the end, and you start seeing everything go down, and the long drawn out war? Were you surprised it stayed around?
Um, I mean, for me at least, definitely in the middle, it felt like it could be the end. Like it felt, I think, a lot more existential for alliances that weren't MPO, because so many of us were based only in this game. So we were watching kind of our community like really just crumble. I think we start like TKR. I think we started that war with around 180 members, and we ended with like 98.
Yeah.
So it was, I mean, and we lost
So
one of our best allies in it, and there was just so many alliances that got, you know, that disbanded because of it. That, I mean, I think a lot of us were feeling like, yeah, this could be the end, up until what happened at the end happened, at least.
would it have been the end of P&W? No. But would it have changed drastically? Yes. It would have changed in the format of that other game that won't be mentioned. Um, their goal was to definitely chase out the TKR community. that was one of their goals. That was like one of their main goals. They have been cited multiple times that they wanted to get rid of TKR. But when they were asking us initially for the unconditional surrender and stuff, they wanted us to abide by their own terms and what they wanted and how they wanted to shape the game. So you can only imagine what they wanted and stuff like that based off of their habits from the other game.
But to answer Pub's question, is like they kind of had this idea that TKR was always out to get them, and so it kind of turned into a us versus them. Like neither can live. Well, like
So
whoever's there kind of a thing. Like it had to be us or them.
so from my perspective, from what I gathered at that time, uh, Black Knights, the government for Black Knights at the time, still had a lot of grievances against TKR. I don't know if it dated back to their times back in Obsidian Order or the breakup of it or something like that, but they had some issues, some unresolved issues with them, and it just built up. It's kind of like
That was
eh,
the UK side. That wasn't the MPO
yeah,
side.
that wasn't NPO side. That was BK. And NPO, I guess they just viewed TKR as the biggest threat
Well,
to their
you know,
dominance.
like you said, like for BK, it came from the breakup of Obsidian Order and like that whole thing, because that did not end nicely. But then with MPO, I remember it had a lot to do with when we were allied with MPO in the early game, and they viewed what we wound up doing as backstabbing them, and they never like they continued to use it because they never saw us as being like really willing to do anything with them. Like I when with the leader before me, TCL, he was trying to ally them at one point, and that went poorly and kind of reignited everything because they thought that the reason that talks failed was because TKR had membership would never accept MPO kind of a deal. And then I accidentally played into that by at that point we didn't have anybody in FA. So I made Lordship FA, and then they just saw that as being like, oh, well, you're putting in somebody who's obviously anti MPO, and it just kind of went down further from that.
Oh, Worship was one of my favorite people to work with.
Yeah, but Lordship doesn't like MPO, and they didn't have good history, so
I remember when NPO first joined the game and everybody was like all doomsaying and stuff like that. And I'm like, who is NPO? Like, like the Mensa community had no idea except for the few people who played the other game. I just kind of looked at it like, oh, cool, another alliance to fight. All right, that's fine.
yeah.
And then, yeah, I quickly realized the mistake in that, and I was like, oh boy, this is nice, I guess.
Yeah.
Seems to be a common theme with Cyber Nations alliances coming here, and then you see all these other nation sims popping up now. P&W alliances going into there, playing pretty much the same way.
I think one of the biggest issues with communities going from game to game is that in one game they'll be dominating or they'll be like the top dog of that game, and they get in their head, oh hey, let's go to this other game and we'll instantly be top dog there too. And instead of like integrating into the community, they just try to reshape the game to uh to how they want it and stuff like that, which isn't bad because it creates conflict. It does. And the initial major wars with MPO and stuff like that, those were interesting wars. but like the MPO's Last Time war, that one just got too personal. If they had accepted our surrender or white peace or whatever like that, I think the game would have been in so much better condition than what happened afterwards.
It's like, though, that like, I mean, I don't know how things, just because it got so toxic, I don't know how the game really would have recovered from it in the way that it went. Like if they, yeah, exactly, like it wouldn't have if it kind of became an us or them thing just because of how it played out. And so if they had stuck around, I really don't know how this game would be now.
So, Adrian,
Uh-huh.
how long have you been in this game for?
Uh, God, 6 years? Seriously, in the game, 6 years.
Oh man, you're a grandma in this game.
If I'm a grandma, you're a great grandpa, so.
Hey now, don't be talking to me like that.
Well, thank you too. We appreciate it, and I know you guys have a lot more stories to tell that I think would probably play out a lot better in an interview format, one-on-one, rather than in this kind of chain where we have to move from guest to guest on a semi time limit.
What he's trying to say is our people will talk to your people, and then we'll. Yeah.
Absolutely, he's got it.
I gotta admit though, I'm actually kind of surprised that you touched up on NPO's Last Time instead of like going back from like Cindy Sphere to EMC and then building up to it.
Well,
Unfortunately,
if we could make this an all-nighter, a sit-in, we could.
yeah, time constraints are they're a unfortunate reality.
We didn't even get to talk about DDR.
I know. There was like so much that we could have talked about, Adrienne.
Yeah.
What are y'all doing next Friday? We can make it happen.
Next Friday I got work, but I could do it next Saturday.
Next Saturday sounds like a plan.
I think I could do that too.
All right, there you go. Tune in to venue to be determined next Saturday.
Yep. Thank you guys again. We really appreciate it.
Hey, you're very welcome.
Bye.
So next person here is I DM'd you way too early, Matt. Sorry. There we go.
Hello.
Howdy. All right. Yeah, so I DM'd you a good bit in advance there. That's my bad.
It's fine, don't worry.
So I guess similar topic here with NPO. You guys, UPN, were allied with them for a while. I believe, I'm gonna check to make sure I'm not spouting nonsense here, through NPO's first time as well.
Yeah.
So what kind of, outside of the usual ally finding process, was there anything that led to that? Like, did them coming from cyber nations play into that, or was it just a normal kind of, it slowly developed into a treaty?
I wasn't involved with the actual signing process on that one, but from UPN's view in terms of the way things were going at the time we ended up signing up with NPO, we were in a little bit of a losing cycle, which continued. So we were still in the Power Covenant era, and weren't performing particularly well. And NPO was an opportunity to get more scale, because we really needed to try and turn around the old war record. And I was only a normal member back when that was signed, but I viewed it quite positively as, okay, we're getting some backup here.
Definitely makes sense. And to mention, to touch on that cycle that you brought up, would you, I don't know how far back there you remember, would you call that more of a just like unfortunate circumstances, in that a lot of your guys' wars that you ended up in were, enemy coalitions outnumbered you guys, or was it more of like an maybe allies weren't holding up to par that they could have been, they were, the competence advantage was shifted in favor of enemy coalitions?
I think there were a couple of reasons, really. I mean, my first war that I actually fought in was the VA war, which we actually ended up winning. And then the next war UPN walked into was Oktoberfest, and that was where the downward spiral began. Mistakes were made on our side. And I think it was really in terms of the way the spheres set in, Oktoberfest really set the boundaries of the sides in the power government era. I don't think we reacted particularly quickly enough to change how we were doing things. I think there was a degree of being stuck in I think there was a degree of being a little bit stubborn around strategy, and I think we certainly UPN had some internal problems as well around who we were, how our internal government was functioning, and that structure didn't change until I came into government. And UPN was also screwed over by the Teutonic Order split, which was where a group of incumbent government, round about election time, split off and founded a new alliance, and that's when I came into Gov, and we tried to change things around internally how we did things then. But in terms of the poor war performance, I do not think we reacted quickly enough to how the other sides were working. And I think that's fairly obvious in how the record was back then.
That makes sense, definitely. The one war that I really did want to touch on was actually was Nightfall, because that'd be the CBs offered there were pretty interesting. To outline some of them, you had, you had TKR spheres upper tier consolidation, so people wanted to stop that, which I think we've seen, that's not something different from CBs that we see now. History of dogpiling perceived threats, knock TKR out of number one, that kind of stuff. So what was that planning process like? How was maneuvering that, the very large group of alliances that I see here? What was that whole grouping like?
It was I think the main thing from our view was, yeah, TKR were very much on that incline up, and it was very much we had to do something before easy mode would just be able to steamroll all over us. In terms of like UPN's perspective, we were given the offer after the planning had started, from what I remember. And that I know UPM was struggling with the timing of it, so we would have been slightly late in joining in on the initial planning. But from UPN's perspective, it was very much we needed to gain some additional experience, and we needed to cut down to size.
Definitely makes sense, and none of that seems out of the ordinary from even some of today's, even the current war, the CBs that we've seen used. What was your experience during NPOs last time? I believe you were, let me double
Yeah.
check before I put my foot in my mouth. You were leader during that time, I believe.
I was, yeah. So NPO's last time was very, very long for a war. And the hostility on the negotiation side and the delays have obviously just been mentioned. What I would say about that war was there was a sense of from UPN's view going into it, again, there was a sense of being, we've spent too long being on a losing side. We have to put our foot down. We have to make an aggressive move while we have a chance. And obviously we were preempted on that. In terms of the way the negotiations went, obviously I over-delegated because I had underloading as dealing with FA, and I over-delegated in the negotiation period. I was in support of there being tough terms put into place because we had felt like we'd been on a losing side for quite a while, and we needed to leapfrog because obviously, as you can imagine, if you've been losing for that long, there are all sorts of repercussions. You suffered economically, you struggled with recruiting, you constantly got shit on for being constantly on a losing side. I can't really speak for the other alliances that were pushing the aggressive terms on, and collective responsibility, we were part of that. But there was some sense of being we needed punitive terms. And then I know Adriene's mentioned kind of the impact that had on TKR and alliances in Coalition A on the losing members side. Obviously the effect on that was completely reversed and put onto Coalition B's side, the IQ-TC plus side, when the bans came in. So NPO was obviously the first to fall, and then alliances started quitting left, right, and centre on the Coalition B side. So there was a sense of shell shock there after the conclusion of that, and a real sense of being, well, what do we do now? Because a big chunk of the side we were on had been vaporized or decided to disband overnight.
Yeah, that's what rapidly blew the war effort to a complete end for you folks. Do you ever think there'll end up being another war like it? Not in terms of length, but in the multitude of individual peace deals, even some people switching sides. That's not really something that we see today. More so, I mean, you might get an individual peace deal of somebody joins in individually, like Carthago or Aurora did for this current war that we have between TKR and Co. against Florida. But side switching, none of that's really common. Do you think that'll ever pop up again, or was it more of a NPO's last time phenomenon?
Well, I hope we never see anything remotely like NPO's last time ever again, because that destroyed the game community on both sides of that horrible war. In terms of side switching, I think we might see some side switching mid wars if we ended up having one drawn out anywhere. Any war drawn out longer than our current war's on. But obviously, I don't think we'll be looking at wars anywhere near that length. But side switching mid war could be interesting if alliances had a reason to do so. And obviously that would reflect on them. But I don't think we'll be seeing anywhere close to the exact circumstances that happened within Endpold.
Definitely makes sense. Velyni, I'll throw the call back to you again. Anything else that we need to touch on before we leave? I believe it's Sketchy who will hop on next.
No, nothing else. Thanks for popping in and joining us tonight and sharing your perspective.
We appreciate it, Matt. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Have a good night. I know it's late in your time, so make sure you get some sleep.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Sketchy, you've been invited to speak.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
What's up, Sketch?
Oh, not much. Half asleep.
That's the best way to be.
Alrighty. What are we discussing?
Well, let's jump into actually, if you recall Trail of Tears, I want to touch on this just briefly here. You were leader of Rose at the time.
Correct. Yep.
And so you guys were on the defensive, I believe.
Yeah, sounds right. I think BK hit us and Pantheon in that war. Yeah.
Yes. But despite that, you guys ended up pulling out a victory there. Was that simply just numerical advantage or poor coordination from the other side?
Well, I can't speak for every alliance at the time, but I remember that in the case of BK, because back then the wars were a lot more on fronts. You'd have one alliance would attack another alliance. It wasn't the sort of chaos where everyone's attacking everyone. And on our front, which was BK attacked Pantheon and Rose, BK's blitz was a bit lackluster, and our counter blitzes were pretty strong. So that's how we won our front. I wouldn't say. I would say the numbers are fairly even, but I think we may have had a higher tier at the time. It's been a while. Can't remember the specifics. BK didn't blitz very well on our front, is my memory.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. And now you were part of the formation of Golden Horn, right? Golden
The
Horde
Golden
with
Horde. Yeah, me
yes.
and Buorhann formed that. Yeah.
And just boredom at the time or something else?
Well, at that period, we had gone through I think it was 9 months of peace with no wars, and me and Buorhann were both sort of done with our respective projects. He was in Mensa, and then Mensa disbanded, and I was in Rose, and I I was starting to retire, step back, and I just went to him. I'm like, we should start an alliance. And then I went to him again, and then again, and again, and again. And eventually he was like, yeah, you're right. That's a good idea. Let's do that. But the mindset was basically break the peace, cause chaos, start wars. That was our thought process at the time because the game was very stale. There wasn't a lot going on. Everyone was sort of just growing, and IQ was sort of the dominant sphere at the time, but they weren't using that for anything. They weren't attacking anyone or doing anything. And so yeah, that was kind of our thought process for forming the Golden Horde, and it went to a lot of our actions and the policies we set for that alliance and who we recruited for it.
Makes sense. And looks like it was fairly successful for the time.
Yeah, we had a good run.
I have. So, we've had a good couple of interviews or a good couple of people talk about NPOs last time here. What do you remember? I know I just touched on this with Matt of alliances, either switching sides or piecing out individually. Do you remember some of the reasoning that went on behind that?
Well, it was a very chaotic time. I remember Syndicate switched sides. They were initially tied to MPO, then they switched sides after. I think TCW switched sides as well. I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you about the individual pieces. I'm sure there were a lot of them, but like they weren't. I don't think any major alliances individually pieced out, and I wouldn't remember the rest, to be honest. But as far as Syndicate goes, I believe uh, I personally have always felt that there was some enabling going on, and then when they saw that the game was turning against MPO, they switched sides, and then obviously the guinea pig stuff came out, and that didn't look good. But yeah, I couldn't tell you much more about that. I don't remember all the specifics of why people switched sides.
It completely makes sense. It seems like some people were late in joining, so yeah, different reasons for different people. Now, a more recent war, although maybe not altogether that recent, would be Duck Hunt, which they hit that
Yes.
$1.3 trillion mark. That was the third war in orbit to cross a billion in damages, or excuse me, $1 trillion in damages. Do you feel, short of the Syndicate and TKR cutting ties, BK picking between the two, that war could have been avoided? Because I know a lot of it was about Quack's size.
I think a version of that war was always going to take place. I think if TKR and Syndicate split, one of them obviously probably would have avoided it, but there were a lot more factors involved in that war than just their size. Like, for me personally, prior to that war, like I think we were in Children of the Light. It was me and Kegos in Children of the Light, and we had some issues with Syndicate, which had kind of led us to want to fight them at the time. So yeah, I don't know if them splitting would have necessarily prevented the war, but it would have been a very different war with different targets. Maybe Syndicate would have been attacked individually. Maybe TKR. It's hard to say.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And are there any parallels? I mean, I know now you're in Singularity, so you're back to prominence here. Are there any parallels that you see between that time with Duck Hunt and Quack's size difference to now with Florida or ODOO?
Well, I mean, at the time, Syndicate and TKR had signed a treaty, and that was how Quack formed. And they told everyone it was going to be a temporary treaty, and it didn't end up being a temporary treaty. And now they have a treaty, and they've told everyone it's going to be a temporary treaty. So Well, Tarok has anyway. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, I guess. That's the parallel that comes to mind for me, at least.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That, or you can, if you want, I guess, two major spheres to draw the parallels there, you could go back to Hollywood and Celestial. But
Yeah, I wasn't around for that period, but yeah, I mean, even EMC and IQ, we had the same situation where IQ told EMC to split up, and EMC told IQ to split up. It's not the first. This has happened many times before. EMC ended up splitting up, and then IQ didn't. So it's not a great situation to be in, where one sphere is telling the other one to split, and then the other one's telling them to split, and there's clearly trust issues as far as whether or not that's going to happen.
makes sense. Absolutely. I think actually this covers what we've got for you. Velyni, do you have anything to throw at Sketchy? Let's see if we haven't
Sorry.
lost. Oh, there he is.
Sorry,
You're good.
I'm chewing, so I missed you. What was the question?
You got anything else you want to throw at Sketchy?
Just kind of the same off-topic thing. Sketchy, what is it? You're somebody who played, left for a while, came back. What brought you back to the game? Was it the community? Did you just kind of need something to fill the void, or?
So I was told certain things were happening in the game. It didn't end up coming to pass, and then I kind of just got bored and I stayed. I had specific plans when I came back, and they didn't really pan out. Like some people noticed, but I had gone to Oblivion, and I had some thoughts about what I was going to do there, and I went somewhere else, and then I was like, all right, what do I want to do? And I found something to do, and that's why I'm still here. But yeah, as far as coming back, I don't know. I was just sort of pulled in. The problem with quitting this game is people message you still all the time. I like, come back. Like Buorhann will know. He always messages me like, "Oh, can you come back? We'll make the Golden Horde." I was like, I don't know, bro. I'm kind of done with the game. And then one day, this is how I came back last time. So I've quit before. I just decided to come back, and here I am. And
Nice.
then,
Well, I'm
as
glad you
abruptly,
stepped
I'll
back.
leave again.
Glad you came back. People, I think a big part of the show for me is just realizing how far this game has come, and having those memories with people and everything. I mean, whether it's the kill time or whatever, I think we all have something that keeps us motivated playing, even if it is just something simple. But
Am I
appreciate
supposed to
you being back.
be? Am I supposed to be responding to the chat or no?
You can if you
If
want.
you want to, it's up to you.
Okay. Buorhann keeps asking me questions he knows the answers to. It's very rude.
But yeah, nothing else, Lysander.
All right. If you want to answer any of the questions, Sketchy, you're welcome to. It seems like there's interest there.
Alrighty. Man, I just kicked all the bad members, Buorhann. That's all I did. I just had a big list of people I didn't like, and I kicked all of them. That's how I turned Rose around. For a time, anyway. It's unrecognizable. I like Rose, but it's not the same alliance it was when I was leading it. Rose was more like Guardian, lean and mean back then. But yeah, well, that was a very short history lesson.
Are you sure that you can't still call Rose lean at 230 members?
Yeah, yeah. It's fat and soft.
What do
Fair
you
enough.
predict? I got one more question for him. What moving forward in the game here? What do you predict? I know we kind of talked about this on another network before, but what do you predict politics and PNW? A year, 2 years down the road, do you think we'll just go with the same cycle that we've
Yeah.
already witnessed?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to look and know what happens 2 years from now, have a look what happened 2 years ago. The game is fairly cyclical. The problem is there's a lack of new alliances and new talent coming into the game to basically start new things. Like, it's even worse now than when I left. Like the amount of new alliances that are around is you'd see splinters popping up all the time, and now it's like I look at the list and you look through the top, and most of the alliances are like 2019, 2018. Seems like there's a bit of a dry spell. It's even harder to make new majors now. Like even Singularity, which is the newest major, you could say, is still made up of older players, and it's still, it's existing communities that have come together, which isn't necessarily as fresh as, say, like a brand new alliance. So I don't think much is going to change. I think we'll just be in the same cycle as always. But you just got to make the most of it and do interesting things in the process, cause drama, I guess.
Makes sense. Drama's the one
Yeah.
thing that keeps politics rolling here. And if it doesn't, revenge arcs usually do. So thank you very much, Sketchy. Velyni, I'm gonna assume you got your answer there and you don't have anything else to. Awesome. All right, thank you again, Sketchy.
No
I
problem.
appreciate you coming out.
Okay. Kick me out.
All right, back to the audience you go. And now, by request, 2018's voted worst player of the year, Sweet Ronnie D, is going to be invited. If I can find him, is he still here? He should still be here. I just can't find him anymore. I gotta invite him to speak. One moment. Where is he? Oh, he's not here anymore. Of course he would make me do that before he leaves. How rude. I gave him his invite. I gave him his open call, and he leaves on me. He flees.
I think he fell asleep. Them grumpy old bastards.
Grumpy old man. Yeah, that happens. Is he still? I can't see him in the. There we go. We've got him now. There we go. I gave you your invite, but I don't know if you heard it, Mr. SRD.
Having mic problems?
That or he's getting his intro music together. Because he did that to me last time. I'm not sure whether it's mic problems or it's we're getting the specialty entry music up and running. If you're there, SRD, if you could let us know in the chat one way or another, that'd be great.
Dramatic troll entrance, just pop out of nowhere and interrupt us.
Could be. He doesn't know how to make these
Rider
work.
is very Discord illiterate here. No offense, SRD. We.
What appears to be broken.
Is that him? SRD? You lighten up.
What you want? You take what you want. You try sometime. Well, you might just find you get what you need.
What's up, boys? Can you hear me?
Welcome in,
Riley
SRD.
with the epic entrances.
What's
So-
up, boys? Pleasure to be here. 40-hour late. I am ready to go to bed. You guys have 15 minutes. Let's do this.
Deal.
My friend,
all right.
I'm like 15 beers in. Like I'm surprised you stayed awake.
I'm surprised I stayed awake.
I ordered a double whopper with cheese, banging back, cans of Bud Light left and right. I mean,
I just finished watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. It was delightful.
Nice.
Great time for the family. Really dug into the kids as they were teenagers, like young teenagers. Turtles just want to get along. They want to be accepted, just like all of us, really.
Wow, what a story.
It was beautiful. Great story. Great message. And they turned April O'Neil, a redhead, into a black lady, like they do to all redheads in all media currently, which is weird. I don't know if anybody else noticed that.
Replacing one
SRD,
minority with another.
Give us a brief introduction of you. Who is?
I don't need an introduction. Please get out of here. That's your goddamn job. All right, are we
Whoa.
allowed to swear in this?
Whoa.
No, right? We're supposed to keep this PG?
We're supposed
PG.
to keep it pretty PG, yeah.
All right,
It's my,
sorry, guys.
it's my
I will
go-kart.
not fucking swear, I promise.
So, for the one person who doesn't know who SRD is, he founded Grumpy, the premier whale alliance, and ran it quite successfully.
The greatest alliance in the history of PNW. Come on now.
Correct, except he somehow got voted 2020 or 2018 worst player. So
That's
don't know
right.
how those two mutually exist, but who knows?
You need to be the worst to learn how to become the best. That's the key.
That's the key.
And,
I know you mentioned
have BK get really mad at you for a number of years and have them vote me out.
well, that seems like a solid strategy. I know you mentioned when I was talking to you, you're not, Great VE War in your old age has become somewhat hazy. Is there anything there that you recall
So
back when
I recall
Viridian got
back in the
hit?
day, V was green, right? And it was old. And you know who's green and old too is the new quarterback for the New York Jets. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. How excited are we, guys? He's going to turn that team around. You got, what's his face? Was it Garrett Wilson now? The rookie of the year. He's going to be throwing passes to him. I cannot wait to watch them play. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is super grumpy and old. Have you ever listened to him lately? He's like 40. Granted, he's younger than me, but still, he's old.
I was waiting for the art of distraction here.
Hey, for the record, I told you if you wanted me on, I'd be happy to derail your conversations, and that's what I'm here for.
I'm really
We got another
disappointed
10
you didn't
minutes.
stick.
Let's do this.
You didn't stick with baseball. It's a shame.
No, we went
how
football
did
this year. I
things-
don't like to be this one-trick pony. We're switching it up.
Fair. How did things change with you guys from Grumpy being a part of the coalition to hit and beat Quack and Duck Hunt to the alliance that then signed into Hollywood, which was able to fight 3 separate spheres to a white piece in Guns N' Roses?
Wait, what?
How did you guys go from being anti-Quack for it was too large in Duck Hunt, and then you guys
They were too
signed
large.
signed in to form Hollywood, which became probably larger than Quack was?
Wait, where are you getting this from? Are you just making shit up? What are you doing to me right now? We weren't bigger than them. That is ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as, did I tell you guys about the time back in Thanksgiving? I was on a jury for a murder trial. And this guy was a freaking crazy person. What he did, he was on trial for murder, arson, burglary, and I think robbery too, which is interesting. I don't know if you guys know this, but burglary, you can't actually commit burglary if it's during the day. You can only commit burglary at night. It's really fascinating.
Just
But
for the
anyway-
record, Politics and War is not condoning any illegal advice and do not authorize this message.
Second Velyni's message right there.
But it was crazy because what I found really interesting about the trial, it was right before Thanksgiving, so I was like, oh, we need to get this over because I want to go on vacation. But besides that, what I found interesting was like how they set up the trial, like the defense. So like they call certain people in certain order. So like when we started, the first thing they did is they went over the 911 call, which was freaking heartbreaking because the guy is like, oh, my wife's dead. And it was like, wow, that really sucked. And then they called him up. And then right before lunch, the guy was like, hey, by the way, because he was grilling the husband, because we're like, oh, well, it's probably the husband that did it, even though he wasn't the one on trial. He was just a witness. And then he was like, right before lunch and before he rested, he was like, hey, did you know that the defendant was having sex with your wife? And the guy was like, no. And he's like, all right, well, no further questions. And he walked away. And everybody in the jury were like, oh, what just happened? This is amazing. What is going on? And it was bonkers. And the whole thing was like that, except it was, really gruesome because he stabbed the lady like 40 times. And then he tried to tie up her little son to a chair, hit him in the back of the head with a beer bottle, and then tried to set the house on fire, burn the kid alive. It was ridiculous.
I'll give you a wide opening right into the other right into your third story arc here, SRD. Is there any specific method that you found that has helped build Grumpy into being the, as you put it, the greatest alliance in politics and war history?
It's called being the best. You just be the best, and people want to come be part of the best. And the other key is that you charge people to join. So if they have to, so it's like going to a club, right? No one wants to go to the club where there's no line to get in, or where everyone just gets in no matter what. The key is to say no and then make them pay to join you. That's the goal.
Makes sense.
It's called building demand, my friend. Building demand.
Then obviously having already built, like for example, now where Grumpy's already, the whale alliance, that momentum just helps you guys in keeping that
never
title.
Duplicated. The Grump. What's that? I'm sorry, I was interrupting you. Talking about how
You're
awesome
good.
the alliance is.
Just mentioning you guys have the momentum now that you've become the premier whale alliance.
We've been the premier whale alliance for years.
Fair enough. I guess I'll end off this little bit with one boring question to watch you spin it into something else.
I will do my best to be entertaining.
Since Hollywood formed, and even a little bit before that with Duck Hunt, a lot of the globals appear to follow this like Rose Syndicate PKR political axis. Do you agree that politics has been predominantly controlled or influenced by these three actors?
I have a question. Have you been asking questions like this to everyone for the last 3.5 hours?
No. There's been some different versions of it, but it's history, SRD. That's what this was about.
There's a lot of history, I guess. So what was it? Something about three people doing stuff, and then people doing stuff?
About Clemens, Bonds, and all them not be and Pete not being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, this is absolute bullshit. They should 100% be in the Hall of Fame. That's a bunch of angry old white writers trying to gatekeep for absolutely no reason. The Hall of Fame is a museum of history. They are a huge part of that history, and they 100% deserve to be part of it. I mean, if you're gonna put was it Ty Cobb who beats the crap out of women? You're gonna put that guy in the Hall of Fame. You got to put the other guys in the Hall of Fame. I mean, freaking what's his face? The two guys with the home run race. They basically saved baseball in the late '90s. I don't know if any of you guys were alive for that.
McGuire?
Yeah. And they 100% deserve to be in the Hall. I don't think, actually, are either of them in the Hall? I don't even know. I don't think McGuire is. Sosa might have made it. I can't remember.
I don't think so.
Have you seen Sosa's face recently? Terrifying. Yeah. I don't know what that guy did to his face, but holy crap, it is scary.
Looked like quack tearing.
Yeah. Super terrifying. Whoever
SRD, I got a very
is-
serious, actual serious side note. Just curiosity myself. How'd you come up with the Grumpy Old Bastard's name? How did that become like the one that you stuck with?
Oh, because we were grumpy and old, and I didn't want to be men. And I was just like, oh, grumpy old bastards. That sounds great. What was really important is how amount of time I took to come up with our flag. I spent at least 45 minutes looking for pictures of Stadler and Waldbauer to make sure that I could get the perfect one. Because I was like, they encapsulate everything Grumpy's about.
Nice.
And if I was a VIP member, I would link the 5-minute montage of Stadler and Waldorf right now, just making cracks at people. Because, that's what I like to do. It's fun. All right, boys, I think that's about my time. As always, I've been great. And you guys have a great day. Take care. Good luck. Hopefully I scared
Enjoy
off enough
nap
people
time.
to destroy WANA's last stand, but probably not. It looks like I only lost 4. Peace out.
All right. See ya, SRD. Makes sense. Old man needs his nap time. So with that, we pull in I get officially the last individual, unofficially the second to last, to discuss history with. WANA, are you here?
Yeah, hello, what's up?
Nothing much. How are you doing?
I am chilling.
Good.
WANA's a free agent in ways these days. As free has been completely open since his retirement, and now Agent W is upon us with nothing else to worry about but winning a war right now.
Yeah, the war is going pretty well.
Very nice, very nice. Lysander, what do we got for WANA? Suppose we're gonna talk a lot about the syndicate.
Yeah, I imagine so. So let's actually we're gonna pick up with Duck Hunt again, because that's actually the conclusion of Duck Hunt is where you took your position in the syndicate. You stepped up as FA, correct?
Yeah, it was slightly after Duck Hunt. I took over from Adam, who had taken over from Party on an interim basis after the last ride.
Okay, right. And so what were your thoughts on that those wars before you stepped into the role, and maybe if they changed after you stepped into the role?
Duck Hunt, I was not really even frankly involved with Gov quite yet. TLR was when I got more involved. At the point of TLR, it had become pretty clear that Quack was going to be going its separate ways. And so we saw this war as basically pretty much a slam dunk way to go out on a win, and sort of end things on a good note.
Makes sense. Would you agree that since that point, since Duck Hunt, politics have kind of primarily revolved around the actions of Rose, TKR, and the Syndicate?
I would say that's fair. I think there have been a number of other important actors. I think, Cataclysm has played important roles at various points. I think Grumpy played important roles at certain points. But I would say those 5 have been, the most consequential political players, at least as far as the past 2 years have gone.
Makes sense. Now, you guys, after the Quack split, you and Nexus and maybe a couple other people formed Blackwater, correct?
Yes, although actually it's interesting because Quack or Blackwater was really an Adam thing. Blackwater was his doing. I just kind of inherited it from when I took over.
Okay. And would that have been, if you could go back in time to that point and you were available then, would you have done something differently, or would Blackwater still have been, or something similar to Blackwater still have been the move forward?
I mean, this is only, hindsight speaking, 2020, but I don't know that I would have necessarily made Blackwater in the same way. I don't think Blackwater was, frankly, a very good block, a very strong block. I probably would not have made it the same way if I was sitting in the driver's seat at that point.
Makes sense. So what was, you were a head FA now at this point in time, and Guns N' Roses kicks off.
Yes.
So what was the kind of thought process at the syndicate during that time frame? Because shortly after, in the war called Brawlywood on the wiki, you hit Hollywood with Rose. So did FA relations change between, Guns N' Roses and when that kicked off, and then to Brawlywood? Because it seems like, right, jumping into Guns N' Roses would have made sense. Everyone else was already involved at that point.
So it was a mix of factors, frankly. Partially, we had just gotten out of our treaty with TKR, and although I will say, very honestly, we were concerned around the time that Hollywood, or sort of the alliances that would become Hollywood, were starting to know that they might try to take a swing at us. They eventually decided not to, and then pretty early on in that war, we were approached by Lord Tyrion. He asked us to join that war and defend Rose and hit Hollywood. Given the fact that we had just been allied to TKR and we didn't want to sabotage that relationship, we decided that we were not going to join the war. Really what changed for us was twofold. The reasons that we engaged in Brawlywood essentially boiled down to SRD ran his mouth on a radio show saying something about wanting to hit us. And it became pretty clear that if the combined forces of Rose and Oasis and whoever else at the time couldn't beat them, we had taken note of that, and we weren't going to let ourselves just essentially get rolled by them for free. So we decided to work with Rose to hit Hollywood.
That makes sense. Logical path there makes sense. So just to kind of reiterate for everyone, Blackwater set out. I think really most of the game was involved in that war, because you had Mystery Inc., you had Oasis, and you had Rose and Rose Sphere all hit Hollywood, which at the time was full Hollywood. So Error 404, Children of the Light were all still tied in as well. A couple of those alliances, like Air 404 and Children of the Light, left after the fact.
Yep, that's correct.
Yes. So I think you've been a relatively controversial player for the Syndicate during your stint as FA. I feel like that's fair to say, right?
I think that certain people think I'm controversial, but they are not that bright, frankly.
Okay. So I'm gonna roll through with this here. For example, hitting Hollywood with Rose Sphere and Brawlywood, not really that big of a thing. That's, people understand that. And then Mr. Inc. and Oasis signed their MDP, and then you and Clock hit them in the war called Armenia's Revenge. Nothing. Obviously the people getting hit might have not liked that, but nothing that as a whole strikes the individual as controversial. But then you guys, there were, for example, signing Rose to form Celestial, and then the whole Wayward drama with signing Eclipse, not joining in defense of Cataclysm and Paradise during
That wasn't a
Bifrost
defensive
Crypt.
war, by the way. That's just a lie if you say that's a defensive war. Not an
Let's
accurate
jump
statement.
into that. Let's jump into that. What was going on in Cindy at the time to say, you know, we don't view this as a defensive war, and so we're going to sit this out?
Well, so very frankly, Cataclysm were poor allies throughout our time in Wayward. They were verbally abusive to myself and members of my government. They just were not, they did not treat us in a manner befitting of allies. And then throughout that time period, Cataclysm had really been pushing and saying, well, we got to work with TKR and we gotta fight Ouroboros at the time, which was Rose and Eclipse. And we didn't really necessarily want to do that, really, frankly, with you, especially because we had left our time with Rose. Not that we, you know, wanted to stay with them necessarily, but we didn't begrudge them. We didn't dislike them. And so Cataclysm went out of their way to be antagonistic towards Ouroboros and put us on a path towards war with Ouroboros, and a war that they frankly knew and they should have known that we really were not favored in. And so they were bringing us really down a pretty bad path, frankly. They were playing almost suicidally, if I'm being quite honest. And then Midgard decides to hit TKR, and Cataclysm jumps up immediately and says, "Hey, we have to go defend TKR because we want to fight Ouroboros." And really, what really made, in my mind, the choice for me is before Keygoth had even really talked to me, Big Morph of TKR came into my DM and said, "Hey, Cataclysm is defending us. Are you guys also going to defend us?" Which was it's a pretty big breach of trust as an ally that he committed. And it showed that he really did not have our best interests in mind. And so I told Keygoth, I said, "Hey, you know, listen, if you want to defend TKR, that's your prerogative, but you guys are on your own. That's you know, your prerogative to do that. I'm not going to bail you out because it's a bad move." And it was a bad move, and it backfired on him.
And I guess, you know, what was internally kind of the thinking on, I mean, you guys signed Eclipse right after.
We didn't sign Eclipse right after. That's also not true. People say we signed Eclipse. We waited a month before we signed Eclipse, and we weren't intending necessarily to always sign Eclipse. It's just that literally Eclipse was the only people who approached us about signing. So if there had been other people to approach us, perhaps we would have made a different choice. But I mean, at that point, what are we supposed to do? Yes, we did, Buorhann. Look it up. Look it up.
I would be happy to scroll through here. Let's see. It'll be in news here. Just so that we have the timing right on all this, because why not while we're talking about it? We might as well.
Anyone, it's free to look it up. It's very public record, public knowledge.
So the M level was signed on December 12th. And the 72 was given when? Yeah, it was a full month. It was a full month.
It's public record. And people can say what they want, but it's public record. So I'm not sure what people are arguing in this matter.
When you signed Eclipse that month later, did you anticipate internally some form of, you know, outside there's going to be drama over this, given, you know, they hit our old allies in Wayward, and now we had Cindy had their justification for not joining, but publicly it was a bit of a shakier thing. Did you guys anticipate and prepare for that blowback signing Eclipse, or did you not think that it would have been a
Yeah, I mean, we knew that there
problem?
was going to be some blowback, and I've maintained throughout that Kata and the people of that alliance are, they're entitled to their feelings about how things went down, but they are not entitled to distort or lie about what went down, and they're not entitled to try and blame the syndicate when the syndicate made every effort throughout our working relationship to make it work. And so, yes, I mean, they're entitled to be upset that we didn't defend them in that regards. But at the same time, I mean, they should be blaming Key Gods. They should be blaming Deca. Those were the two responsible for ruining that relationship, frankly.
Makes sense. Yeah, this it seems to be that part of the misremembrance is on not necessarily between when you left Wayward and then signed Eclipse, but between the end of the war and signing Eclipse.
How do you mean?
It was 9 days between when Cataclysm and Paradise surrendered and then when you guys signed Eclipse. So I think that's where the conception that you guys left Wayward and signed Eclipse, I think that's where the timing gets mixed up, as people see it as the war ended and then a little over a week later you guys signed Eclipse.
Yeah, you're right. But I would still say there was a month in between when we signed them and when we didn't. And throughout that time, my DMs were open. And there was only one other person who approached us about signing a treaty during that time. And so ultimately we went with the option we thought was best. And if other people had approached us and said, "Hey, listen, we want to do something," I would have listened to them, and I would have given them, just like I gave that other person, I would have given them the time of day to hear them out.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I do want to touch on here is the thinking of, because we've had post NPOs last time, we've had two occurrences of Spheres signing a treaty. So we had Mystery Inc. and Oasis signing the M level, which you and Clock then rolled them for, and by you I mean Blackwater. And then when Cindy went and signed Rose to form Celestial, we had the de-escalation M between Hollywood and Celestial, where both sides signed a mutual defense while they were demilitarizing. So basically, let's knock back down to peacetime. And then after, once we're back down there, the M goes away. What was some of, the thinking there in Celestial on that M level?
Frankly, the original thought process of Celestial during that time was we didn't want to fight HW. Clock had just gone to war with Backrooms. And Clock had a history, frankly, of chaining into wars. They had done that before. And so I had gotten with Harry, who at the time, was the main Rose contact. And I said to him, hey, we don't want to fight a war right now. We want to go enjoy some peace, grow for a while. And he agreed. And so we approached HW and said, hey, listen, we don't have a reason to fight you right now. We don't want to fight you right now. And they agreed. They said, hey, we feel the same. We don't want to fight you guys right now. And so ultimately, Big Morph, who is still the head of FA for TKR, put together what became the treaty that was the Cele HW treaty. And I think that maybe, in hindsight, we probably should have objected to it. We probably should have said, hey, let's not, the treaty's a bad look. But we took them at their word and decided that we would sign it with them to, just protect ourselves in case Clock wanted to take a swing at one of or both of us after their war while we were sitting demilled. So we made it pretty openly clear that the treaty has a mechanism that ends it that is entirely reliant upon Clock. Clock, was not very happy about it, and there were people, even like Schwinn, who held a 2-year grudge over that treaty. But that was how it came about, essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense here. Final question I guess I have for you is, now that you've retired, what are your thoughts on Cindy signing TKR again to attack Florida in the current global?
I mean, I say this without, I don't set FA policy anymore. Frankly, I think that TKR is still owed one by us. I don't know that I necessarily would have made the same decision that Tarak made, but it's not. I mean, it's his game to play now. And as much as TKR is owed one by us, Rose is absolutely owed one by us. So I'm not unhappy.
Makes sense. Velyni, do you have anything for WANA here?
Let me think of anything that you might not have asked.
In the meantime, I'm just gonna, again, links have been dropped in the chat for the trivia form. If you've not filled that out, up to 12 million if you get 12 right answers. Every answer has been covered in the show so far up to this point, so you should be able to fill that out for 100%. And then by clicking on the 9th anniversary radio show link, you get a Nation Award for listening to the 9th anniversary radio show.
That's what I was looking for. WANA Abbas asked about finding MPO and PNW.
Okay, so that is a good story. Abbas is right. So for those of you who don't know, I was Pacifican in another life. I was a member of NPO in CN, and I was also a member of NPO in a game called Project Terra, where actually a number of PNW alliances sort of trace their lineage through PT. Guardian and SK specifically can trace their lineage there. BK2, actually, I believe, trace their lineage back that far. But essentially, in Project Terra, I eventually became, I think it was IO of FA, might have been IO of IA, way back when. And PT eventually sort of shut down. And as Project Terra was shutting down, the NPO branch that was in Project Terra sort of migrated to Politics and War, which was just opening up its beta. And so I joined and helped found the original beta branch of NPO in PNW. Initially, I was tapped to be the Imperial Officer of Internal Affairs for NPO and PNW. And then, a good friend of mine, Ryan Christopher, who was the Emperor of NPO at that time, wanted to step aside, didn't have enough time to do it anymore. And he asked me to take over, since I was essentially one of the only active gov for the Alliance at the time. When I took over, I frankly did not know very much on how to run an alliance. And I wasn't, frankly, getting a lot of help from my government and from the community. And so at the end of beta, we decided to basically leave the game. And then NPO eventually comes back to the game much, much later, a couple, I think it's 2016, 2017. And at that point, I think I probably was maybe I was still in TS at the time. I might have been in COS at the time. but I was very much anathema to that community at that point. Had a big falling out with NPO a while back. I was not, and I'm still super not on good terms with them. So I was not really running back to their doors once they came back.
That makes sense, yeah. I know Vel had to jump midship. He has an IRL concern here. So thank you again, WANA, for talking about both the NPO, the founding, how you started version 1 over here, and then Cindy and talking about the different stuff that went on during your time there.
Yeah, of
I
course.
appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So with that, I am going to bump WANA back to the audience. This needs to be added to and have multiple parts. Well, I think for now this will last, with some editing. Thalmor has provided us plenty of things to look to bloop. I think for now this will last as a solid history review from multiple perspectives. Although in the future, who knows? Whatever people would like to see, I'm sure there's more knowledge to be had. Oh yeah, no, I don't need you to do it though. We'll figure this out later. All we need right now is just the recording stuff. So thank you folks for tuning in. Let me pull up this stuff. So I will one more time here. The trivia I don't think is as important here, but I'm going to post it again because why not? We are at the only reason I'm bringing this call back up is because we are literally within what's the timing here? Let me go to View Nation. We are in less than a half hour from the 9th anniversary radio show awards claim link from expiring. So in under 30 minutes, that link will no longer be valid to claim the award. That is the second link there, the 9th anniversary radio show link. The Google form is for the trivia. Make sure you fill out everything properly if you want the 12 million. All questions have been answered in the show as of tonight. And so thank you again to everyone who came on. That would be Pubstomper, Thalmor, Buorhann, Matt, Adrienne, Sketchy, SRD, and WANA. Thank you to Velyni. Unfortunately, again, he had to step out due to IRL. But thank you very much to him for helping me co-host this. And then thank you to Rush and Alex for giving us the opportunity to do this. It was a blast, and hopefully this is something with much more planning, much more, structuring. Next year, we'll have 10th anniversary. Maybe we'll have another show or a series of shows. Who knows? But thank you again. And I believe that wraps this up. So let me play the theme because we always have to end on the theme. Oh dear. Of course the bot breaks. Why wouldn't it? This is for those of you wondering, if you ever tune in to a Thalmoria show, that's how this always goes. That's okay, Monty. I'm sure Zig is still going because Zig is an honorable man who would never cut me off early. Let's pop this in here. And
Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio. Yeah, here we go. Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio. Yeah, here we go. Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio, Lysander Radio. Now watch him go. Ladies and gentlemen, Lysander Radio. Now here we go.
thank you folks again. Have a great night, and